This story could have started differently, but the villain was going to kill the protagonist as soon as she entered the novel, despite having sufficient qualifications to confuse the man. This lady was charmingly beautiful and truly had what it takes to seduce men. But it's a shame the killer didn't take the bait and knew nothing about taking care of girls. He looked directly into her eyes and asked if she had decided to deceive him and if she feared death. That he could reach her at that moment. This development was different from what the system said, and this girl's story should have turned out differently. A certain entity Lolo, who called itself a system for moving through the worlds of a high-ranking universe. It was simply looking for a master who died tragically to enter the book world to complete tasks. This can resurrect the main character in the novel world and also grants her noble status. Incomparable beauty, and could become an important character, contributing to the plot development. But she had to agree to partner with him in exchange for the opportunity to resurrect. The girl somehow, miraculously, escaped the villain's monstrous clutches. Being on the verge of death, she thought she could say goodbye to the original story and start a new, happy life. This life should have had everything: incomparable beauty, a noble family, and the resurrection, which should have happened without unnecessary problems. And yet, she had an important mission to fulfill, being just a supporting character. And she had to help the group of main characters advance the plot and achieve a happy ending for this novel. And failure of the mission would deprive the main character of the right to exist. The main character of this novel was Razam, who had a completely different life. The main character was a charming green-eyed girl named Heidi. But this story couldn't have happened without a young man, who was the main villain named Razam. The main characters were really waiting for the lady to finally reveal her potential and help them uncover this story. Belle Karen was a 17-year-old girl and the only daughter of Count Karen, and this was the new identity of the novel's main character. When Bella woke up, she heard a man's voice and saw a blonde young man in front of her. In her previous life, she was a sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, recently passed away due to overwork at the age of 27. It was after death that she met Lolo, who invited her to contact him in exchange for a chance to resurrect. Belle thought she died anyway, it couldn't be worse, so she easily agreed. That's how, not wanting to die in the prime of her life, she ended up in a medieval fantasy novel called The Noble Monster Servant. The main character of this novel was Argus, the first noble of the empire and the eldest son of the Razam family. He was the book's main villain and the main character's half-brother. Bella asked the entity who she was in this novel, and it turned out she plays an important role in the plot development along with the villain. The noble's favorite monster is a medieval romantic fantasy revolving around the theme of a persecuting curse. Persecuting. The novel's backstory takes place in the Razam family, the richest aristocrats under the emperor. The blood of the entire family was cursed long ago by black magic from the east. And it consisted of the fact that during an attack of lust, a person turns into a bloodthirsty monster and kills his beloved against his own will. To find a way to solve this problem, the Razam family, under the guidance of the creator, began searching for a girl who was immune to the curse. It turned out to be the main character named Heidi. She was the only one in the novel, and all the battles that take place in the book happen because of her. The entity claimed that Bella is merely a passerby in this book and must fulfill her role. Belle had incredible beauty, and no matter what man saw her, they all fell under her charm. In the current plot, the main character reveals the identity of the main character, and they both develop feelings for each other at a banquet in honor of the Duke. But the relationship between them is noticed by the main character's older sister, whose name is Sasha. She had been in love with the main character for a long time, so she planned to frame the main character. Sasha slipped something into the villain Argus and the heroine Heidi, trying to disgrace the main character. But a noble lady accidentally took the wine meant for the main character and ruined her plan, and this noble lady was destined to become Bella. Her task was to replace the main character Heidi and spend the night with the villain Argus to help him suppress his curse. Before resurrection, the entity said that all promised conditions had been fulfilled, and that how long the main character could live after resurrection depended solely on her efforts. So she wished the owner success in fulfilling the tasks and a long life. Belle was reborn at the moment. The young man tried to find out who was behind this, and he was considering leaving her corpse intact, but the lady believed there had to be at least some way to prevent the looming crisis and stay alive immediately after resurrection. The girl fell silent, and Argus continued to threaten her with words that it would cost him nothing to simply crush her like an ant. Since she couldn't provide him with valuable information, he decided that he would set the final price himself. And that price was her life, which was supposed to be his antidote for the curse to subside. The girl prayed not to want to die, Lord Argus not to kill her. Just as the young man was about to do something, the lady announced that she had an effective way to suppress his curse, and she could help him. The young man leaned her against the wall and asked her to repeat once more what she had just said. In the original, the Razam curse manifests in a person during lust and is accompanied by an uncontrollable thirst for blood. During intercourse, the cursed one bites his partner's neck like a wild animal and sucks the blood until the victim dies. Argus warned of the consequences if the girl thought about playing games with him, as he perfectly understood that the only way to suppress the curse was to give him enough blood. So he broke the glass and cut his hand on it himself. Drops of blood ran down his palm, and the girl declared that Argus still hated women, and that he would do what he had in mind. Argus's childhood was very difficult, and there were many secrets in his family that influenced little Argus. His mother was a woman who found her husband with his mistress. She was distressed by the pain, so she abandoned her young son and left home. The boy spent his childhood without a mother and lived in a constant environment of gossip, and finally became a monster who hated women with all his heart. Belle knew details about the young man's life and tried to tell him so that he would believe her. Argus asked her to tell him everything she knew and asked her the purpose of her wanting to get close to him. The girl claimed that this was a complete misunderstanding, and the boy seemed to think she wasn't lying. He only wanted to scare her into revealing her secret conspirator, but he got nothing valuable from her. So of course, he wouldn't touch her. But she even cut her palm, and it is unclear whether she should call her brave or reckless. Belle cried bitterly and worried about carrying the guilt of another girl. And she would never break this dam system. Argus stood up and carefully studied the girl to act, while the lady beside him trembled with fear. In the original story, the secondary heroine, Sasha, led the protagonist and other aristocrats to Argus's room to catch the lovers in bed. That day, everyone witnessed a bloody scene that sent chills down their spines. The noble lady who had sex with Argus was on her last legs, and the young man, like a true monster, sucked her blood drop by drop. In doing so, he killed this girl, and because of this horrible incident, Argus was expelled from aristocratic circles with the baggage of contempt. Duke Razam was furious and decided to reconsider Argus's right to be heir. And this conflict in the book was the beginning. The girl understood that she needed to calm down and avoid ruining the scenario, so she asked the young man to wait, because Lady Sasha of the Mainbitten clan would soon burst in with her brother. She said that if the young man forced her into an intimate relationship, it would become the epicenter of a scandal. We are now at a key period in the race, for the heir's position and criticism from the outside world will do him no good. She begged him to drink her blood and let her go so she could live. Argus noted that Bella was a very eloquent woman and smiled, and told her that she should let him go so that it would benefit him. He wrapped his bloody hand and told her that if she lied to him, even at the end of the world, he would find her and bring her back. Therefore, a lady must not let such words slip and must tell him the whole truth. That day at the evening banquet, Sil Razam, the novel's main character, was present. Who was the Duke of Razam's son? A worried lady suddenly approached him and announced that her little sister had just been kidnapped. She cried and said that she saw with her own eyes how a knight forcibly took her sister from the banquet hall. And it was the Duke's eldest daughter named Sasha. But for Sasha, this was the right time to have fun, so she asked to send someone to monitor the entrance and exit. Belle had finally escaped Argus's clutches, and the wound on her palm hurt terribly. Belle felt very dizzy. She thought it was probably the poison she mistakenly drank. The girl could no longer walk and urgently needed to find someone who could help her. Because she didn't want to die, and fortunately she heard a woman's voice next to her and immediately asked for help. At that moment, guests burst into Argus's doors because it was rumored that he had kidnapped a noble lady. People were excited by the news that someone had the courage to do this at the Duke's banquet itself. The door opened, and she was met by a young man who shouted that silence would not help Argus, and that he better confess everything. The young man sat calmly in his room and said that this was complete nonsense, and that someone had deliberately decided to insult him, so he asked the young man to leave immediately, and that he would act as if nothing had happened. The young man said that since Argus had a clear conscience, how about allowing him to search his house? Argus realized that this woman's words turned out to be true, and if he had insisted on her staying with him, he would now be in big trouble. Syl ordered the knights to search Argus's room and did not listen to a single word he said. The knights turned the room upside down, searched under the bed, and searched all the closets but found nothing. Sasha, who was in the room with the guests at that moment, was sure that the poison had been successfully introduced. The person was definitely in Argus's room, and there shouldn't have been any mistake. But something went wrong. She ran to Syl and prayed that she could really see someone, and there must definitely be a noble girl here who was kidnapped. The young man said it was time to end the searches, and that Argus should not force him to look for other evidence. Syl burst into his room in a similar way, and now wanted to get away with it. Argus did not want to let it go like that. The butler had been in the room the whole time, and Argus ordered him and all the servants who broke into the chambers without permission to break their arms and legs and then send them to the slave market. The young man told his brother that the brain is a useful thing, and he really hopes he remembers to take it with him on his next visit. The guests were stunned by what they heard and considered Argus the most terrible person they had ever seen. He abruptly said that they had completely figured it out and that if the knight had other orders, he would listen attentively. Argus requested a thorough investigation into what happened that night and wanted to know who the woman was who entered his room. Not everyone is born with a lucky star, and in one of the families where there was a newborn child, not everything went entirely well. Time passed, the baby grew up, she was already 4 years old, but the situation between her parents, who constantly fought, did not change. The girl turned 14 when the relationship between her parents finally deteriorated. And recently, her family had been going through very hard times with money. When she was 16, her parents finally divorced and the family completely dissolved. When the girl was 24, collectors came to her, insisting it was time to pay her father's debts. They intimidated her. If the girl created serious problems for their company, it would be very ugly for others. When she was 26, the guy she had been dating for 3 years asked her to break up. And it was all because his parents inquired about problems in her family and did not give consent for marriage. After that, she suddenly died due to overwork at the age of 27. Due to a sudden heart attack during overtime, and fate was truly unfair to this heroine. Because obviously, she tried harder than anyone, but she wasn't given the chance to live a happy life. And death brought her the only relief. Belle opened her eyes and was frightened, completely unaware of where she was. That's right, she was dead now. And from then on, it was a completely different story. She saw that her wound had healed, but she didn't recognize the place she was in at all. In front of her was an unknown lady who was very happy that the girl had finally woken up. Belle remembered that someone helped her when she lost consciousness, as it turned out to be the same girl she was very grateful to. She excitedly recounted that, when the girl was sleeping, she suddenly stopped breathing. As if she had gone to heaven, and she got very scared, remembering so many unpleasant moments from the past. Bella was already thinking about suicide. If her past dog life hadn't been her choice, then resurrection was her personal will. And this time she was going to live for herself, and live happily until she was 100 years old. The stranger approached her and apologized for her lack of tact, but she only wanted to make sure the girl didn't have a fever. She was the first person who sincerely helped and cared for Bella after the resurrection. She promised to remember her and repay her as soon as she had the opportunity, so the lady hurried to find out the girl's name. The unknown lady apologized and reintroduced herself, saying this was their first meeting, and that her name was Heidi. The main protagonist, Heidi, was the second daughter of the Mountbatten family. She was raised by her father in the village, as she had no magical powers. After awakening the power of Saint Trantia, she was returned to the main estate. Compared to her sister Sasha, a talented sorceress who grew up with a silver spoon in her mouth, Heidi was like a weed that nobody cared about. This night was the first time Heidi attended a high society banquet. But she left the hall early because she was not used to that environment. She, just like Bella, must have felt confused and scared in this vast and unknown world. Heidi apologized and said she had just returned from the village and didn't know any noble ladies. And the girl in front of her was the first noble woman she had spoken to since she arrived here. So the lady asked her if she had the honor to become her friend. But the entity that helped the girl be reborn was sure that she could not become friends with the main character. And the role of the passerby was to create difficulties and help the main character grow. Belle replied that she couldn't become her friend because she perfectly understood that such an alliance wouldn't happen, and that she had a completely different role in this story. Heidi felt embarrassed and apologized because she didn't know etiquette, and asked the girl not to be angry about such an ignorant proposal. The lady said she had to leave and asked the girl to take care of herself. This entity was called Lolo, and deduced that the mission in which the girl was supposed to surrender to Argus had failed, and the punishment would be fulfilled. Lolo said that if the world mission fails, the system will recycle something very important to Bella. And if she succeeds, she will receive random rewards. At that moment, a maiden approached Bella and sadly informed her that her father, His Excellency the Count, had just died. The next day, Bella was near her father's coffin, and rumors immediately spread in secular society that Count Karen had died of alcoholism. The sole heiress of the Karen family was an immature girl, and many heard that the Count adored her. But this girl was brought to life by an unknown dancer, and it is regrettable that such a title is inherited by such a person. Troubles always come suddenly, and Bella's second life has just begun, and the system has already killed the novel's father. Belle Karen's background is barely mentioned in the original work, but it was known that her mother was an incomparable dancer. Count Karen once saw her perform and fell in love with the girl at first sight, after which they formed a family. After a while, the lady became pregnant, and soon their beautiful daughter was born. Belle was born a year after the wedding, but her mother died during a difficult childbirth. Day after day, Count Karen drowned himself in a whirlwind of drunkenness and could not manage the estate. Soon Bella turned 5, and her father kept drinking, and one day the maid entered and told her that a problem had occurred. She said the baby disappeared near the lake, and they found little Bella sitting in a tree. She shouted for them to bring a ladder, but suddenly a branch broke, and the baby fell straight into the lake. The father jumped into the water and pulled out the baby, who was sitting in his arms, crying bitterly from fear. After Count Karen started his life from scratch, the first thing he did was choose a new wife. Unlike fairy tale plots with evil stepmothers, the woman loved Bella very much. The relationship between them was as if they were relatives, and from that moment, complete harmony reigned in all relationships within the Karen family. That day, the stepmother supported her adopted daughter and told her that even if her father went to the Almighty, she would definitely take care of her instead. Although her father passed away, the girl was lucky to have a trustworthy stepmother. Or so she thought. The maiden was preparing the lady for the funeral ceremony, but the girl had absolutely no energy for these useless activities. She was very hungry, so she went looking for something edible, but suddenly heard a strange sound. Accidentally overheard her stepmother's words, who said it was a shame that the inheritance rights And inheritance remained with this girl, who would come of age next year. And she could inherit the title, and the woman was going to marry her before the ceremony, so that all members of the Karen family would still belong to her. The girl saw that her stepmother was now with her butler. Moreover, she started playing dirty tricks on the new young man. She cheated on her father. And on top of all this, she was also plotting an insidious plan regarding her title and inheritance. She heard that someone was outside the door, but Belle quickly escaped so things wouldn't get worse for her if she was suddenly noticed. Suddenly, in the hallway, she ran into a blonde young man whom she had definitely seen before. The young man said they met again, and their meeting was expected. The girl raised her hand to him, but the young man grabbed her by the back and was very surprised why she was going to run away. He stopped her and looked into her eyes, and saw the lady trembling a lot and looking worried. He asked her if he was really that terrible, that she was willing to run away from him without looking back, and eagerly awaited an answer. Often people have a limited number of chances to be happy, while misfortunes follow one after another. After the death of her father and the betrayal of her stepmother, she is cornered by the main villain of the novel. Lolo explained that everything originates from the current rules of this book world. Plotlines that have nothing to do with the main characters will be allowed in the book. But to preserve logical connection, plot branches that are not written in the original may be allowed to be presented. So it turns out that Argus's appearance at the funeral at the Karen house is a kind of side story. 100 years ago, the ruling family, the Razam family and the Karen family set sail together to expand the empire's borders. During those times, countless amounts of wealth were earned, and strong ties of friendship were formed that would help the families in the future. But after the Karen family's estate and affairs fell into disrepair, these two families began communicating less and less. So the arriving Argus acts as condolences from the Duke of Razam, like her father. She seemed to enjoy testing his patience, and Argus now knows not only her name, but everything that happened at the banquet that night. The young man reported that the Duke's eldest daughter wanted to frame her younger sister. But the new maid got confused and served the glass to the wrong person, and that's why the girl lost consciousness. After drinking the poison, she magically seemed to end up in his room, and the most interesting thing is that Bella had no way of knowing all this. But nevertheless, there were other points that influenced the outcome of all the events that occurred. The young man reported that after the lady woke up, she firmly insisted that the elder daughter of Mountbit was behind all this. The young man truly deserved to be called the main villain because he figured out all the complexities in a miserable couple of days. So now he stood in front of her and asked her to tell him how the lady could claim that the older sister was behind all this, and why she was sure that she would bring her younger brother Syl, and they would invade his room together, thus embarrassing him. The time for the respected Count's burial was approaching, and at that moment, her stepmother had just finished passionately hugging her butler right before the funeral. She came out of her room and asked why the maids were making so much noise during the funeral, and what could have happened. The maids reported that Bella had disappeared, and the lady ordered them to find the girl before the ceremony began. Argus put his hand over the girl's mouth and asked her to keep quiet, warning her that otherwise today she and her father would be buried together if she made another sound. Her stepmother was angry because this girl didn't even care about her own father's funeral and how she planned to manage the estate in the future. The butler stated that the lady was still young, and the estate should be managed by Madame as a representative all this time. Argus and Bella remained behind the wall, and he continued covering her mouth with his hand. At that moment, the girl realized that her stepmother not only wanted to snatch her inheritance, but also directly wanted to take over the management of her estate. Argus noticed that it seemed his stepmother had many plans thought out in advance. To inherit the title, a noble must be 18 years old. Nobles and His Highness, the Honorable Emperor, must attend the ceremony. Yes, whoever inherited the title had to swear an oath of allegiance during the official ceremony. After this, the person receives a paper with the emperor's seal when the heir is still young. He cannot manage on his own, so the elders of the family are his deputies. If her ambitious stepmother becomes a deputy, the consequences will be irreversible. And all the power of the family will be in her hands. Bella's search was still ongoing, and her stepmother asked if the maids had checked her room. They said that the Count had ordered no one to be allowed in. But the lady began to scream, because the maiden had forgotten that she was now the owner of the estate, and was obliged to unconditionally comply with her orders. The butler asked her not to get angry, because the maids simply didn't know during his lifetime. The Count never forgot the young miss for a second, but now it's time for her to go underground. She convinced her lover that the entire estate now belonged to her, and she was sure that this man had wasted 10 years of his precious time. All for the sake of this girl. So now let his daughter pay for his lost years. The butler hugged Bella's stepmother and asked her not to worry, promising her that he would help her take over this house. And now the most important thing is to arrange Bella's wedding as soon as possible so that the plan can be carried out. The stepmother was happy to have such an ally and confirmed that it was important to marry the girl as soon as possible. Belle heard their whole conversation and was beside herself with rage when she found out about this couple's union. The girl asked Argus to forget everything he heard. She understood that if there was a scandal and it spread, it could affect the family's reputation. The young man asked to answer the previous question he asked honestly, and in that case, he would try to keep it a secret. Belle said that night, she simply overheard Miss Mountbatten's plan, and that the poisoning was also just a coincidence, about which she did not lie. She said she heard that there used to be an unsurpassed dancer who was very popular among aristocrats, and that high ranks often came to her. Bella hit the young man's hand and asked him to restrain himself, having heard about his mother. He replied that she gave him advice last night and that he is now ready to give it to her, and that the most beautiful flowers die first at the hands of man, and that the girl must be careful. Argus left without saying anything else, and the lady stood there bewildered, not understanding anything he wanted from her. Some time later, the official funeral ceremony arrived, and Bella stood next to her father's gravestone. She was not his real daughter, but at that moment she thanked him for her second life, and promised to definitely protect his possessions and not hand them over to anyone. Her mother told her not to be sad, and that an important guest wanted to see her. This guest was Catherine Arundel, who offered her condolences to the lady. And the young lady. The name Catherine made a big splash in aristocratic circles, and she ended up at the palace as the Empress's maiden. Having trampled her own mistress, she became the Emperor's mistress, and occupied a successful place in secular society. She gave birth to her only son, the supporting character Georgia, and gained her worth through the child. Lolo told the girl about the iron triangle between families. The lady came on behalf of the Emperor, and the purpose of her visit was Bella. Catherine approached her and told her that it had been a long time since they saw each other, and the last time she saw the girl was at her debut. But since then, she had become even more beautiful. It was very strange, but the ladies argued over which of them was more beautiful in the empire. And all this happened right at her father's funeral. The stepmother told Bella that her lover admired her very much, and that he wanted the girl to marry the Marquis of Arundel. According to Imperial laws, if the heiress marries before inheriting her title, it means she has renounced the inheritance. The stepmother had planned everything very well and had already managed to join forces with Miss Catherine. She was going to marry Bella off as soon as possible, while the prince would receive the inheritance and the territories. Marquis Georgie was the emperor's illegitimate son, and in the original, he was killed by the main character for treason. And Bella definitely was not going to marry him of her own free will. The stepmother brought the invitation and handed it to the girl, telling her that next week there would be a banquet for His Majesty's birthday. And the lady should attend because Georgie would also be there, and this would be the best excuse for a meeting. This was another task for Bella, but in the last task she was almost killed by Argus. And she decided to refuse the invitation to see what would happen next. But her choice was not made in 10 seconds, so the system automatically made a choice. And a week later, at a banquet, the heroine must confess to the main character. Razam. The count's funeral was completed, and a week later, a banquet was held in honor of the emperor's birthday. Her stepmother arranged a date with the supporting character for her, but Lolo ordered her to confess to the main character. And Bella understood that many events awaited her, in which she would have to not lose her composure and face them. The next day, at the count's estate, Bella was sitting in her room when the maids knocked on her door. They brought a pile of papers, and the butler said they were territorial accounts that the girl needed to check. The girl understood that this was just another idea from her stepmother, which she shouldn't have dealt with. But unfortunately, she didn't know that the girl was a modern employee who stays up late and can work overtime. And since then, she, when she learned of her stepmother's plot, began to look for a way to inherit the title as soon as possible. She discovered that if minor nobles want to inherit the title earlier than planned, they must present special gifts to the emperor. The Karen territory now had financial problems, and the estate officially belonged to the stepmother. After the lady completed the mission, she would open a shop. Items and services could be exchanged there, and this sounded promising to Belle. But the main character, Razam, was the most dangerous in the novel after Argus. And the girl wondered if nothing would happen if she confessed to him. In the original, the plot revolves solely around the main characters, while 3 other characters handle the development. Several characters leave the stage after a few appearances and no longer participate in the plot. And the hostess is resurrected as a passerby Belle Karen. She changed the original fate of the characters and became the first in the novel to leave with errors. So the original story will no longer affect her. In other words, the mistress now has a silver spoon in her mouth. She cannot be killed by characters who did not leave the story. In other words, neither the main character nor the villain can harm her anymore. It turns out that, on the contrary, she should be afraid of characters who leave like the stepmother. The assassination plot did not work for her, and Belle only had to deal with her stepmother, after which she could live happily and peacefully. The maid said that the eldest son of the Razam family had arrived and was waiting for her in the hall. The girl saw Argus in front of her and said that, according to etiquette, before visiting, it is necessary to send a letter with a request and wait for the owner's permission. The young man said it was fine, and he didn't need to be received as a guest. The girl asked him if something bothered him about her coming in person. His house was not a place of interest to come here without an invitation, and the young man was truly interested in something else about that night. He thought for a moment, and then admitted that he wanted to repay the favor she had done him. The girl was very surprised to hear his words, and was eager to know what he wanted. Although she said what happened that night was an accident, the young man was sure that Bella helped him a lot. He said he didn't like being indebted, so he had a special gift for her. In the original, to gain the emperor's favor, Argus took charge of the main trading chambers. He did business not only in the empire but also outside of it, so he was very rich. He presented a luxurious box, inside of which was a very exquisite gift. And rare. The young man waited until the lady opened the box and asked if she was happy with his gift. The girl opened the box and saw a strange bottle inside and wondered if the young man was going to play a joke on her. She said that if Mr. Argus came here to have fun, he had better leave right now. The day before, an incident occurred in Argus's office. The butler approached him and told him that the check was complete, although Count Karen neglected his duties. He secretly helped his relatives with money and also protected him as the next ruler. The young man asked the butler if it was likely that he would ask his daughter to help him that night. He said he heard rumors that Miss Karen was trying to inherit the title earlier than planned, since she had big problems with the gift for the king. Since she was his supporter's heiress, the young man decided that she should help. Therefore, now the young man didn't understand what was happening, because he only wanted to absorb his father's kindness with such a gift. But in the end, not only did she dislike him, but she also brought him to disgrace. The girl complained to Lolo, although she never pursued jewels, but this villain clearly wanted to ridicule her for being poor with such a gift. Lolo explained to the hostess that this world is different from hers. There are few seasonings here. Sweets are made with honey, and the original explained the value of honey, which was even passed down as an inheritance among the nobles. Honey here is hundreds of times more expensive than precious stones and gold. And some lords even went to war for a jar of honey. In short, anyone would receive the title for a jar of honey. But it seems Miss Bell did not appreciate his gift. The girl just now realized that this small jar of honey would help her obtain the title. And she asked Lord Argus to stay and not leave. At that moment, in her stepmother's room, the butler was recounting how the eldest son of the Razam family apparently gifted the lady a jar of honey. The maid said that the young lady was going to deliberately introduce her to the king to gain power. And now the stepmother realized that she had underestimated this girl in vain. She didn't understand when Belle managed to spend the night with Razam himself and what connected them. The lady became furious, as expected from the girl born to the dancer. And she even managed to charm Argus, who hates women. The butler asked the lady to calm down, because there were still a few days until His Majesty's birthday. So she already had a new idea. The lady ordered the maid to go tell her that tomorrow they would take an inspection tour of the territory. And she would teach her how to manage it properly. The next morning, at the Count's estate, Corinne Bell was preparing for a trip before which she had to meet her stepmother. She was still trying to play the role of a loving mother and praised the girl's new dress. She said that today the lady would inspect her territory for the first time, and this is very important for further management. Unfortunately, she won't be able to accompany her today due to business matters, so the butler foreman will go with her. She promised the lady not to worry and that she would definitely protect her. And after leaving, the lady was glad to have finally gotten rid of this girl, and ordered the maids to urgently search her room. She was angry because the girl wanted to so easily inherit the title from a jar of honey. But at that moment, the mansion belonged to her, and the lady was sure that from now on the entire territory would belong only to her, and to her son, who had not yet been born. The territory of Naz was located in the north of the empire. It was a separate city with a small population. Cold and terrible roads, so there were no merchants there. The main source of income was taxes, but with such a small population, there wasn't much money. The main reason for poverty was precisely that the population could not pay those very taxes. Even if the girl inherited the title, managing such a large territory was not an easy task. So she needed to think about something long-term. Belle reached this conclusion after looking at all the reports her stepmother sent her for verification. On the village street, everything was calm, but suddenly a young man approached one of the women. Indignantly, how dare she sell her vegetables there, because this is his spot. The woman said that her granddaughter was sick and urgently needed money for medicine. So she asked the young man to at least stay here for a day and sell his vegetables. The young man shouted loudly, "If a woman has no money, let her daughter die," and asked her to leave. And not stop him. Bella could not stand aside seeing this situation and ran to help the poor woman, near whom the young man scattered the harvested vegetables. The girl picked up a beet lying on the road and said she could help this woman. She helped her gather vegetables, put them in a basket, and asked if she was okay. Bella said she would like to buy all the beets from the woman, and the butler was indignant. Beets were servant food and should not be served at the table. But the lady was indignant because if she said that she would buy them, so be it. She gave the woman a coin and was afraid she wouldn't have change, but the lady said she didn't need change, and that she really hoped her granddaughter would definitely get better. Lolo did not understand why the girl did this. She didn't do it just to help. As far as he remembers, Lolo mentioned that in this world, the only way to get sweets is honey, which is more valuable than gold. The Naz territory is located in the north. There is no opportunity for exploration or development of other industries, but sugar beet is grown here in large quantities. They have always considered beets low quality, but they do not know that sugar can be made from them. So Bella found a way to inherit the title and develop the economy of her territories. Suddenly, the girl felt like someone was watching her, and her feelings turned out to be reliable. Silra Sam was indeed watching her. Argus had already provided her with evidence that what happened was fabricated by Sasha to frame Heidi. And this is 90% true. The young man was sure that he should not involve this kind lady to confirm something. Belle returned to the estate. Today she visited the Nas market and grasped the general situation happening there. In the city there are clothing and shoe stores, although small, but forgotten. Mostly cheap fruits and vegetables, black bread and beer. Since Nas is located within the continent, the market sells meat, poultry, and seafood. And if Belle wants to develop the economy of Nas, then she needs to have several business plans. The girl returned to the estate, and the maids were already waiting for her return. Suddenly, one of the maids fell to the floor and started begging for forgiveness. And the lady nearby ordered to grab this dirty, cheap thing. The stepmother claimed that the maid had sneaked into her room and wanted to steal something. So she caught her red-handed, but the maid was on her knees and insisted that she hadn't stolen anything. She cried and said that the cleaning lady had let her into the room and asked her to change the blanket and that they were trying to slander her right now. The lady became indignant and looked angrily at the maid, who dared to make excuses in front of her. But Belle asked her to stop and tell her what the maid stole from her room. The lady said that the honey Mr. Razam gave her yesterday was stolen, but there was nothing to worry about. And her stepmother had already hidden something so important, Bella guessed. It seems the purpose of her departure was precisely to look for a room and collect the honey so she couldn't present it to the king and receive the title. Her stepmother was truly a cunning and capable woman, and Bella now needed to play along. So she asked what her stepmother was going to do to the maid. The girl said that what the servant stole belonged to her, and her mother always taught her to be independent, so that she could solve it herself and punish the servant. After her stepmother left the room, the lady asked the maid to get up to talk to her. She said that she knew very well that the maid was not stealing anything, but sometimes the truth is worthless, and she needed to understand her. Belle said that from today, the maid will leave the mansion. And she sends her away not because she doesn't believe, but so that she is no longer the center of attention. The maid was worried that the young lady might be in danger, but the lady was confident and asked her not to worry. This maiden had served under her mother's orders, and Lolo asked if it would be better if the two of them teamed up. But the lady was sure that she wouldn't be able to defend herself, and if the maiden continued to stay in the mansion. Then a similar situation today would repeat with a worse outcome. Bella was sure that when she inherited the title, there would be big changes among the servants of this house. This afternoon, at the Mountbatten estate, one of the ladies was hysterical and very restless. That day, there was a scandal in one of the rooms, and the maids near the doors were afraid to utter a word. The lady entered the girl's room and asked again why she was angry. And after her sister returned, she started losing her temper twice a day. The girl was indignant. This girl already had a wonderful life outside the city, so why did her father bring her here? But the lady assured her that no matter who she was her own sister. And it was natural that her father would get angry when he found out that she wanted to harm her and was mistaken. The lady was sure that this girl was only disgracing her family. And the ladies whispered behind her back that her sister was a peasant girl who didn't even know etiquette. The lady said that Heidi returned only to help her father connect his family with another status family. The girl said that she liked Sil, and that under no circumstances would she allow him to be stolen from her. Her mother was sure that her daughter was very different from her sister, who was useless, and could be used as a tool for marriage. But this girl was completely different, and with her magical talent, she was destined to cause a sensation in the future and become the most honorable princess in the empire. Heidi was a very kind and sincere girl, and the whole family took advantage of her open heart and treated her as nothing. The next day, the maids were discussing how Miss Belle had collected a bunch of beets from the farm, and she was also in the slums. At that moment, the lady approached the maids and asked them what the ladies were chatting about here instead of working. The lady noticed that Bella had become somewhat strange lately and immediately reported it to the butler. After the funeral, she had a strong feeling that they were drifting apart and that she was gradually losing her power over her. The butler asked the lady not to worry. The banquet was supposed to take place in 2 days, and Miss Bella no longer had the chance to give the emperor a gift to receive the title. But Belle was determined and had many other things to do besides collecting palace gossip. She spent that day in the kitchen. Lolo told her that according to the old method, to get sugar one uses sugar cane. Or beets, first they are boiled and the syrup is obtained, then filtered several times. And finally, the sugar is obtained. Lolo helped get the information and admitted that he did not expect the hostess at such a young age to be able to produce sugar by herself without any help. He had only read books about it, but had never tried it. But failure was an integral part of success, and every step increased the chances. So after a while, the girl managed to produce sugar, and her efforts paid off instantly. Lolo stated that he chose this girl because when faced with difficulties, she always showed perseverance and persistence, which many people do not have. Bella never got discouraged, and this is a very valuable quality, which is why she managed to fulfill her plans. Now she can show this sugar to the emperor and receive her deserved title. The emperor's big birthday has arrived, and Bella and her stepmother have already arrived at the event. In front of the main palace gate, the girl saw the Mountbatten family carriage. And it was definitely them, otherwise who else would the emperor personally know? The mother warned Bella not to speak loudly about the Imperial family anymore, and to watch her speech in secular society. They were greeted by the butler, who invited Lady Heir to the gala. Banquets in honor of the emperor's birthday were the most important holiday and solemn of the year. Upon entering this palace, everyone tries to cling to someone with a higher status. And the main goal of this dinner is to meet more noble people. The stepmother said she would go talk to someone, and Bella noticed how crowded the palace was. Indeed, nobles love to gather in groups. The first group was those who valued blood. The second group was the upstarts who only valued strength. Therefore, the more power a person had, the more they were demanded by inferiors, regardless of which side they were on. The lady told Lolo that there were too many people here, and she needed to find a convenient place to explore the area and find the main character. So the lady went out to the courtyard and sat on a comfortable swing, because she was still not used to such a large social setting. Lolo sat beside her on the bench and declared with full confidence that she wouldn't find anyone here except mosquitoes. The girl was quietly resting in the shade of the trees until she heard the voices of the ladies next to her, who were clearly fighting amongst themselves. One of the girls poured a glass of wine for her sister and asked her to return to her village so as not to disgrace her family. The girl, onto whose dress Sasha poured the glass, asked her sister to stop so that her father would not punish her again for her misdeeds. The lady told her to stop threatening her father and was sure that her sister had simply deceived her father. But he would soon realize that she was a wild peasant girl and could not help her family. Duke Mountbatten was Sasha and Heidi's father, and he had a political status comparable to the Razam family. Only the Mountbatten family was allowed to train mages, as the empire had strict restrictions on the use of magic. But it was still an important criterion for measuring the family's fighting strength. But one of the sisters was sure that she was the mage on whose training the whole family focused. And even if she hit her sister right now, her father wouldn't say anything to her. She continued to shout at her sister, but suddenly heard a rustle in the bushes, which made her stop. Until that moment, Bella had been sitting quietly in the bushes. But she was bitten by a mosquito, causing the lady to make sounds that the ladies heard. The ladies paid attention to the bushes from where the sound came and probably noticed her, because she made a lot of noise. One of the sisters declared loudly that whoever was in the bushes should immediately get out of them. Otherwise, she would call the guards. Belle got out of the bushes and greeted Miss Heidi, whom they already knew. The sister asked how the girl knew this stranger, but Belle was not going to go into details about the first meeting. Lolo reported that the main character had been discovered and was now heading straight here. She was very worried that Sasha and the main character might discredit her honor. And Lolo said that she could refuse and accept the punishment. At that moment, the main character approached them and asked what the ladies were doing here. It was Mr. Seal, and Belle said that now she would understand everything she had planned. The lady who spilled a glass on her sister asked the young man why he had come here. But the first thing he did was approach Heidi and ask her what happened to her and why she was like this. Her sister didn't even let the girl answer and asked for permission to explain the situation herself. She reported that Heidi had just run into a maiden carrying wine and had stained her dress. Her sister deliberately distorted the facts so as not to reveal her true face to everyone, and told the young man how he could mock his sister in public, and this would disgrace her honor. Heidi replied that it was okay, it was just an accident, that she didn't need her sister to accompany her, and that she could go change her clothes herself. Her sister said that the lady could go change her clothes, and for now she would stay alone with Salem. Heidi went to the palace to change her dress, which had a bright scarlet stain from the drink. But she heard someone following her. It was Belle, and she had been deliberately following Heidi the whole time. Heidi was very happy to see a familiar face, and the girl smiled sweetly at her. She asked why Belle followed her, and the girl had no choice but to confess. She was very worried that the girl had witnessed a fight with her sister and burst out laughing. But Belle said she was just worried, so she followed her. She was very happy that Miss Belle was so attentive, and this moment reminded her of a story from her past life. In her previous life, she was indeed a considerate person when working as a manager. Despite all her fatigue, she always helped people. And they also used this word to describe her before. But after so many false words, Heidi was the first one she truly believed in. In the original, the main character planned to invite Heidi to the ball, but due to her dirty dress, she could not show up at the celebration. And later, Sasha showed herself in all her splendor and won His Majesty's favor. The heroine of the village felt more and more uncomfortable and eventually became the laughingstock of the whole family. Lolo remembered that the main task of the passerby was to contribute to the development of the plot, but not affect the main plot, and the girl wondered if it would be a violation to promote the relationship between the main characters. But Bella could not afford to intimidate her benefactor and decided that Heidi must definitely appear at the dinner. At that moment, at the banquet, Argus was standing on the top floor. He asked the butler if he had found what he asked for. The butler reported that Miss Belle was not in the banquet hall and was probably somewhere else. The young man was also interested in knowing where Mrs. Karen was, and she was talking to Mrs. Arundel. Argus ordered them to continue watching them, and if the butler finds Belle, he must inform him immediately. At that moment, Bella was next to Heidi, who was looking at her excitedly and didn't understand what the girl was going to do next. She looked with frightened eyes and asked what Bella was doing, but the girl asked her not to ask unnecessary questions, and that she should take off the dirty dress now. The stepmother finally finished talking to her friend and was very surprised to see Bella in a different outfit. She menacingly asked where her dress was, why the lady was wearing a completely different suit, and even with a drink stain. She asked her stepmother not to ask what happened, but affirmed that the dress was made especially for today's banquet. The lady sighed and understood that they were wasting time now and the banquet would start soon. So there was a spare dress in the carriage that Belle urgently needed to change into. The lady understood that if the Marquis of Arundel saw her in this form, the engagement would definitely come to an end. Lolo still didn't understand why the hostess was going somewhere and why she was now wearing the protagonist's dress. He warned that important characters would appear today, the main heroes would gather. And villains. Well, as usual, the girl managed to be in the right place at the right time. And she again overheard a strange conversation about Mr. Argus. They were talking about the main villain of this novel, and they were clearly not speaking of him in the best way. One of the girls said that if the demon tower hadn't been a threat, then Argus would have long ago lost his heir status. Mrs. Emma was the biological mother of the villain Argus and sister of the head of the demon tower. The Duke of Razam fled after being discovered as a fraud, and has not been heard from for over 10 years. If we talk about the disputes over who will inherit the leadership of the family, the Duke wanted to transfer it to his younger son Sil. But because the Demon Tower intervened, the scales had to be balanced. And the Razam family is number 1 in the empire, so there are many families who want to swear allegiance to them and mix them with dirt, so the issue of who will lead this family was the most pressing in aristocratic circles. The girl guessed that these two were not at all in favor of Argus, but against him. Argus ordered the butler that he could take care of these two after the banquet was over, and that it made no sense to cause trouble for His Majesty now. The couple continued to discuss how much they pitied Argus, since his father despised his son. And his mother ran away. Bella could not stand those who criticized other people behind their backs, because she herself was in the position of the one called a mistress. And pathetic divorcee. Everyone says that speech is a mediator between people, but it is also the sharpest weapon that can gravely wound. Gravely. Therefore, the girl was not going to tolerate those who dared to insult other people's families and their honor behind their backs. The girl confirmed that they were talking about Argus, but the stranger should not have cared at all. Suddenly, Argus approached them and heard Bella trying to reprimand those who insulted him behind his back. They often made fun of him for being an illegitimate son. The children laughed at him because he was born to one mother and raised by another woman. His father scolded him because the boy fought very often and was sure that the heir was disappointing him. Only then did Argus realize that no one else in this world would protect him, and that all he could do was rely on himself. Bill at that moment shouted that they should apologize to Argus, but the young man laughed at her and said no matter how bad he was, at this moment he is the rightful heir to the Razam family. And if she wishes to marry him, then she should wait while Argus is kicked out of the house. But Argus himself intervened in their conversation and said that he should disappoint this couple, because that day will never come, and they are completely wrong in everything they just said. They did not expect to see the protagonist of their gossip here, who appeared at the most opportune moment. The couple hurried away. The young man turned to Miss Bell, who had just tried to defend his honor. The girl thought about it. The young man probably decided that she was not interfering in any of his business, and wanted to shout at her, but suddenly the young man asked if she had really fallen in love with him. Belle did not expect to hear such a question. She thought for a moment before answering. She did not know why Argus decided to ask her exactly that question. The young man said that there was no other explanation for what she had just done, and the lady said that she only gave them a lesson because she could not ignore their words that did not apply to him. The girl understood that she was not immortal enough to date the main villain, and said that the banquet was about to start and she had to leave. At that moment, the young man had a strange feeling. Upon learning the truth, it felt as if his heart had been broken. It was time for the formal ball, and Heidi warned Sil, although the hostess had seriously prepared her for this. It was her first time dancing at a formal event, and she was very nervous. He told the girl that it was okay, and that she just needed to follow him and relax. He offered her his hand and told her that he would lead the main part of the dance, so the girls should not worry. And only now did Heidi understand why Belle asked her to wear her dress, saying that she was just paying off a debt from last time. Although Heidi often kept her distance, her sense of good people never failed her. And she considered Miss Belle a very good and kind person. Her sister became indignant because her father and Silam decided that Heidi would dance the first dance. The enchanted Heidi danced a beautiful dance with the strong man, and Lolo warned the lady that she had lost the chance to confess, and that if she regained her sight, then she should prepare for punishment. As soon as the first dance ends, she will definitely confess, and Belle only wanted the heroine to understand that she stands out among common passers-by. Belle admitted that she actually felt a little sorry for the main character, so she decided to help her. Readers can only see that Seal fell in love with her after accidentally learning about her abilities. In fact, the main character was sincere with him, however, her love was tied to interest. So Bella was very sad when she learned that this girl was just a pawn on the board of the hero. And the villain? Na Lolo was sure that the hostess thinks narrowly. Being the protagonist, Heidi has many different auras. Besides an attractive body, crowds of men run after her. She was fate's favorite. And no matter what she does, the end will be happy in any case. Lolo cheerfully declared that the hostess should not be sad, and that it was time to confess her love to the main character. An emperor's subject reported that His Majesty had arrived for a ceremonial act. Emperor Charles, the great Lem Hoskins, appeared before the guests, along with his lover, whose name was Nia Arundel, and he thanked everyone for attending his birthday. The emperor approached the guests, raised his hand, and solemnly wished happiness to the son of the empire. Lolo reminded her that the hostess must confess now, and the girl became very excited. The original emperor appeared only once, only at this banquet, so if Bella does not offer sugar to the emperor right now, she will once again be under the control of her stepmother. After the dance, Syl admitted to Heidi that she danced wonderfully and that the girl clearly had talent. He said that he still had some matters to attend to, so he should leave the girl alone for a while. The young man warned that if anyone starts insulting Heidi, otherwise he might mention his father's name. The Duke and they should stop immediately. In terms of status, the father only speaks to the emperor, and he is the only one who is on par with the Duke of Razam. That night, Heidi overheard an incredible conversation. Her mother was arguing with her sister that their father was going to organize a rebellion and take the emperor's place. The lady said that they had to wait until her sister Heidi married Syl, and he became emperor, and then the best time for the father to start an uprising would come. Heidi understood that her father wanted to take advantage of the fact that Syl would become emperor. But she couldn't do anything, although she loved Mr. Syl very much and could not betray her father or her family. Heidi thought it would be fantastic if she had a trusted friend she could talk to about this. After a while, Bella approached Syl, and he was surprised what kind of girl she was. She asked the young man to give her a little time, because she only wanted to tell him a few words. He remembered that this was the same lady whom he had been following when he was in the slums, helping a poor woman. But the girl unexpectedly admitted that she was in love with Syl. The young man was surprised. It was their first meeting, and the unknown lady had just confessed her love to him without even speaking a word to him. Heidi overheard that Miss Bell had just confessed her love to the master. The young man was still astonished, but the next thing the lady offered simply surprised him, because she asked him to marry her. Heidi was standing next to them and did not expect Miss Bell to publicly confess her feelings. Like a truly brave girl, Belle took the hands of the unknown Mr. Seal and repeated once more in front of everyone that she loved him. The girl said that she wanted to become his wife and asked for permission for their union. As a child, Syl and his mother were in a precarious situation despite being members of Razam. His father, the Duke, fell in love with his mother without divorcing Mrs. Emma, with whom he maintained a close relationship. Most nobles considered him illegitimate and held him in high regard. Traditionalists even believe that Syl's blood is not pure enough to be the next head of the family. Therefore, it was all the fault of his father, who did not divorce. Syl was liked by many noble ladies, and he had no doubt that it was only because of his status. But no one had ever approached him in public and said such words, so the young man began to think that perhaps this girl's family was so poor that they couldn't even teach him etiquette. And the girl he really liked was the innocent and honest Heidi. Syl said that unfortunately he could not marry Belle and was forced to refuse her request. At that moment, the butler was looking for Bella. He informed the lady that they had found the young lady, and that she was now with the son of the Razam family. The lady was surprised that this girl was dating Argus again. But the butler said that she was with the second son of the Duke, and her stepmother was astonished that this girl managed to meet him. This time, Bella completed the task perfectly, so Lolo said that when she returned home, she could activate her reward. Argus was immediately informed that Bella had just asked Syl to marry her in public. The young man was very surprised, which means the girl really didn't like him, because she actually loves his sworn enemy and clearly decided to humiliate him. Sasha saw the girl communicating with Xylem and immediately asked her sister who this girl was. She said that it looked like she was the daughter of the Karen family, and they didn't imply how she knew Sil. One of the ladies heard that the count had recently passed away, and she was the sole heir to the family. The economy in her territories was terrible, so she assumed the lady only wanted to cling to family status. The girl was indignant because she was already sick of Heidi, but now another dreamer appeared in her way. The butler approached the girl and told her that Miss Sasha from the Mountbatten family had asked him to find her. Lolo said that the lady probably saw her with the main character, so she wants to talk. And Heidi said she would go with her. Heidi understood that her sister loved Mr. Seal very much, and if she found out about Miss Bell, she would try to harm her in every possible way. In the original, Seal had a two-faced nature, so he had an affair with two sisters at the same time, just to mislead Argus and hide his real lover. Obviously, the girls were just a tool to distract the villain, but Sasha firmly believed that she and the hero had true love and felt hostility towards anyone who tried to get close to the young man. Belle asked the butler to tell her lady that she was busy and that they could arrange a meeting for another day. The girl thought if Sasha wants to, then she will climb up herself, and she still has no desire to look for trouble for herself. And now it was important for the lady to present sugar to the emperor and receive her title. Sasha did not wait for the butler and personally approached the lady to talk. She wanted to prove that Bella was a worthless piece of glass, and despite her incredible beauty, Sil would never look at her again. Belle admitted that she actually only came to the banquet today because her family had arranged a blind date for her. She said that after a while, her mother would send her to a meeting with an unknown man, and that it would be great if Miss Sasha went in her place. Sasha replied that unfortunately she could not do anything for Bella in such an important matter. Belle thought about saying that it was Georgie, a minor character, but she didn't know if anything would happen since, in the original, he was her loyal servant. Suddenly, Argus approached them, who also wanted to talk to Miss Belle. Belle did not expect to see the main villain here, so she was very surprised by his arrival. He took the girl by the hand and asked her to go with him, and Bella did not expect such audacity. She asked where the young man was dragging her, and he should probably explain the reasons for his actions. But suddenly, Sil took the girl's hand and asked her to wait a little. Belle found herself in a very strange situation between two young men and did not know what to do. Sil said that the lady had just confessed her sympathy to him, so he invited her to be his companion at today's gala banquet. The situation was very unusual and strange, and the young men continued to pull the unfortunate Bella, each in their own direction. The girl asked Lolo for help so that she could do the right thing in this strange situation. Belle asked Mr. Argus to let her go and listen to what he had to say. Sil took advantage of the moment and said that she was his partner and he dared not drag her anywhere. Argus again asked the girl if she was sure she wasn't going with him. The girl was very excited to be just a passerby, but somehow she was caught between the hero and the villain. Heidi, who was next to them, noticed that Miss Belle looked very embarrassed and confused. Sasha looked at this situation and became very angry because two heirs were interested in this strange girl at once. Mr. Seal asked why the lady confessed her love to him, and she had to describe this feeling she didn't actually experience. So she couldn't think of anything else but to call the young man handsome, smart, and talented. Argus asked if the girl was really interested in these things in people, and admitted that he was sure she was different from others. Argus's childhood was also difficult, and after the appearance of this woman and the birth of Sil, Argus's life took a turn. He was obviously the legitimate heir to the family, but his father only gave all his favors to his brother. The young man tried hard since childhood, but he didn't understand what he lacked, that all the love always went to Seal. Belle was worried, looking at the villain who could start a fight right now. Seal said that his brother would not be kind by force, and since Miss Belle was not interested in him, he should leave her alone. In the novel, apart from Heidi, all other ladies were just tools, so the young man used women to protect Heidi from suffering. He specifically approached them and used them without giving them a drop of love, because the only one he was willing to give his love to was. And tenderness was Heidi. At this point, the villain will be a more likable character. He has never depended on women because he suffers hatred towards them. Argus said that his brother was probably deliberately provoking an unpleasant conversation. But the young man replied that he actually just wanted his brother to accept reality and not force the lady. Argus asked Bella again if she was sure she didn't want to go with him. The girl fell silent and did not answer him immediately, hoping someone would come to save this awkward moment. Just at that moment, her stepmother approached her and became indignant because the lady was not yet on a blind date. The mistress took her away and asked if Bella really didn't know that she couldn't get involved with the two Razam sons. She said that the Razam family is not like others, and that the girls who end up there die over time, and that she is trying to do everything for the sake of Bella's happy life. Fortunately, the stepmother arrived on time and took the girl away from this battlefield. The lady said that, for the moment, the Imperial family does not have a worthy heir. His Majesty has only one son, and this is the Marquis of Arundel, and if she can marry him, she will become the crown princess. Belle replied that she understood her stepmother, but a wonderful thought occurred to her. And that night, the date was not destined to come true. The lady apologized to the Marquis for the wait, and finally led Bella to meet him. They approached the Emperor's mistress, Catherine, who was the Marquis's mother, and she informed them that there was nothing wrong with waiting for the future Marquis. The lady said she was ready to introduce her son, and at that moment, a tall young man approached them. And majestic, he said he was very happy to meet you, and that his name was Georgie Arundel. His mother, Catherine, noticed that the lady had an impressive appearance and was as beautiful as a red rose in spring. Her stepmother delivered sweet speeches about how she was truly the most beautiful girl in the family, but only that she was ill-mannered, unlike the talented Marquis. Bella asked Lolo if she really thought Miss Arundel wanted her to marry her son. Bella began to think that she was simply looking for a reason to sacrifice a girl to the Emperor in the original. He liked beautiful girls, and in the early years, the Emperor broke up with the Empress due to a maid's infidelity. In retaliation, the Empress did not go to the temple, so they divorced, and this destroyed the dreams of all his mistresses. And among them was Miss Catherine, who was his main favorite. But as the years went by, her beauty began to fade, and so that the Emperor would not find a new one. She pretended she was looking for a wife for her son, but in reality, she was looking for beautiful girls who would be the Emperor's pawns to stabilize his position. And she was truly ruthless and was willing to betray the Emperor and use her son for power. The girl told Lolo not to panic, and that she would simply use his plan to her advantage. They want to get close to the Emperor because of her beauty, and she had trouble getting close to the Emperor. And show him sugar. Catherine asked her son to show the lady around while she went to talk to Mrs. Karen. Georgie said this was his first meeting with the girl, so they could get to know each other better and spend time together. Georgie asked what Miss Belle liked the most. Bella replied that she loved money, and this answer was also specially prepared for the Marquis. The young man noticed that the girl was exactly as his mother had described her. She had good looks, but in essence she was extremely vulgar and stupid. In the original, the secondary character Georgie is the loyal dog of the minor heroine Sasha. Since Sasha loves to draw, she secretly collects paintings of her beloved to express her feelings. Belle was sure that Georgie would get nothing from her until the end, so she spoke about the dog. Georgie showed the girl his father's living room and said he wanted to go in and greet him together. Belle finally waited for this moment and realized she was actually on the right track. Argus at that moment was with the Emperor, who informed him that news had arrived about his father's victory on the front, and that such a rapid expansion of the Empire's territory was all his merit. Argus said that, when he became the head of the family, he would be as loyal to the Emperor as his father. The Emperor said he would look forward to that day, and that he had great confidence in this young man. The butler entered and said that the Marquis of Arundel had arrived and wanted to see them. The Emperor replied that the Marquis could enter, and that he was willing to see him. The Marquis entered with Bella and greeted his father with a respectful bow. Argus wondered why Belcurran appeared here again, and it was very unexpected for him. The lady never expected to see the main villain here, and Argus wondered how many men this girl had affairs with per day. The Emperor also did not expect to see an unknown lady here, but he greeted her politely. Bella approached the Emperor, bowed, and stated her name. The Emperor said that the girl has a very familiar face, and that she is Mia's daughter. The girl was very surprised to hear her mother's name and asked if the Emperor knew her. He said that she looked very much like her mother. And I remember that crowds of nobles ran after her mother, and he was also one of her fans. But in the end, her mother chose Count Karen. He learned that the girl's father had recently passed away and expressed his condolences. In the end, it turned out that His Majesty and the girl's father were rivals in love affairs. And that is why the Karen family is so far from the Imperial one. Georgie thought Mom was right. The one the Emperor loves is not Mom or even the Empress, but a dirty dancer. He realized that bringing her to the old man was the right decision because he learned many new things. Argus wondered if the lady really didn't notice her beauty, because everyone admires her appearance. And if the Emperor wants to take her as his mistress, then Bella's life will be over. The Emperor asked why Miss Bella had come to him today along with the Marquis. Georgie said that his mother had arranged a blind date for her, and he showed the girl around the castle. They walked past, and he decided to bring her here to greet his father. The Emperor stared closely at the girl who looked exactly like Mia, after Mia rejected him. And he left Count Karen. He secretly pressured his family. He believed this would change her mind, but she refused to leave Karen's family. And finally died during childbirth. The Emperor thought that since he couldn't keep Mia, then in this case he could easily keep her daughter, who looked so similar to her. He needed to find an excuse for her to stay. Then he would confront her with a fact so that she wouldn't run away from him, so the Emperor invited her to stay at the mansion for a couple of days. Supposedly to get to know Georgie better, Bella happily accepted his offer, and understood that, when she received her title, no one could control her life. Argus thought the girl probably didn't even understand what danger she was in, since she accepted the Emperor's invitation without hesitation and didn't even think about the consequences. Bella said she had a special gift for the Emperor that she would like to give him. She gave him a bag and told him the Emperor could try this edible gift. The girl said she had brought him real sugar and was waiting for his approval. The Emperor tasted the sweet sugar crystals, and his face changed instantly. The Emperor, of course, did not expect the sugar brought by Miss Belle to taste so much like sweet honey. In this world, the flower deity is worshipped, and the most popular delicacy is honey. Since beekeeping was only allowed in the temple, the main flow of honey came from there. Among them, the Fry Empire Trade Chamber is the largest supplier of honey. If other empires came up with something that could replace honey, it would be a hard blow to their economies. So the lady exceeded all of Argus's expectations. As expected, Mia's daughter gave the Emperor a big surprise. He asked her where the girl found sugar, but Lady Belle unexpectedly announced that she had made it herself with her own hands. The Emperor asked again if the girl really knew how to make sugar. He really liked her gift, and if what she said was true, then the Emperor should change his plan to make her his mistress. Bella confidently declared that she would like to receive her title, which the Emperor would grant her. The Emperor reported that this would not be a problem, but this small bag was not enough. And if the lady gave him the sugar recipe, he would not only allow her to get the title in advance, but would also give her richer lands. Now, the main problem of the Karen territory was poverty, and this was a very tempting offer. And Bella had to make an important decision. Unexpectedly, the girl refused, but the Emperor warned that his offer might make her feel better, and that it was dangerous for a lady of her age to have something like that in her hands. But of course, the girl knew very well. The appearance of sugar would directly affect the honey market in all empires. A large number of nobles would be eager to profit from this product. However, she had long since figured out how to resist this. Bella said that sugar is a relic of her father. that he cannot sell, but she is going to open the sale of sugar in his lands. And if the emperor is willing to contribute to the matter, then she agrees to give away 50% of the profits. The emperor perfectly understood that the girl had the sugar recipe in her hands. And he could not take it away, so he agreed. And said that the Duke of Razam would prepare all the documents and that it would take a week. But for now, the girl could stay here. And after the conversation, Argus went out with the lady and was surprised how she had the fortitude to negotiate with the emperor. Because one hasty word could cost her her head. Bella was very nervous during the meeting with the emperor and reported that her legs were shaking with fear. After meeting the emperor, Georgie went to his mother, who was angry because the young man had failed to seduce Belle Karen, who, incidentally, also earned the title. The young man did not expect her to dare to take the risk and present a gift to the emperor in person. Miss Catherine apologized to her son and told him she didn't mean to raise her voice. Only that lately the old man calls her less and less, and they must be prepared for the best. Georgie understood that his mother had always been kind to him and raised him well, and that he was willing to do whatever she wanted. She asked Georgie to listen to her carefully, and the most urgent thing now is to make Belle Karen fall in love with him and celebrate their wedding. The lady warned that if the young man marries her, he will receive the sugar recipe and will make her father respect him, and he will forever lose the title of Marquis. Argus asked the girl if her legs were not so weak that she couldn't walk. He said that His Majesty asked him to gather all the documents so that the assignment would be faster. The girl replied that her legs were fine now and she could walk on her own. But suddenly, the young man threw her over his shoulder, and Bella thought something incredible was happening in Argus's head. Argus rarely helped people, especially women, so the lady should be grateful to him. But the girl was surprised that the way he threw her over his shoulder was such a great help. Suddenly, at that moment, the girl approached them at night and asked what she was doing here, and where the Marquis of Arundel was, and she got angry because the girl again didn't listen to her and communicated with Razam. The stepmother replied that the Marquis had taken her to greet the emperor while he stayed with him. So she had just returned from him. The stepmother said that Miss Catherine expected the girl to stay 2 more days to better communicate with the Marquis. Belle was about to tell him about this. His Majesty will allow her to inherit the title in advance. She will stay here for now so that all documents are prepared, so the stepmother should probably go home without her. The lady was at a loss. She checked the honey before leaving and it was there, so she didn't understand how His Majesty granted her the title. She supposed that Mr. Razam had helped her a lot otherwise. The lady would not have been able to impress the emperor. The young man replied that it was not his merit and that Bella did not need help at all. Belle said that her mother did not need to guess what she would do in her position and over the years. Thanks to her father, she went from being a commoner to a noble lady and lived a carefree life. However, she started an affair with the butler. She also tried to take away his title and inheritance by marrying an unreliable person. Belle warned that after her return, she would definitely take care of her stepmother, and that she was no longer going to waste time here in empty conversations with her. The stepmother shouted that she would like to explain herself. And in reality, not everything is as the lady thinks, but Bella no longer listened to her. Argus warned the lady not to forgive her stepmother and not even to turn around. But she was sure that if she chose the right path, she would never look back. The young man noticed that many nobles would come to her, so she should probably find a reliable man and marry him so that he would protect the property of her territory. And then he confidently invited her to consider marrying him, and the lady did not expect these words. The girl looked at the young man in surprise and decided that he probably decided to play a joke on her. The knight approached her and with a serious look asked if she really thought he could joke about such topics. The girl smiled and replied that she was not from the church and that she feared she did not have that right. He warned Bella not to be afraid and that under no circumstances would he touch her after the wedding. He said he wanted to be the head of the family and not depend on a woman, and that in a few days there would be an imperial competition. So he asked the girl to give him an answer by then. Belle asked if she could find out why the young man wanted to marry her, since in the original the villain was only interested in her career. So the sudden confession to a passerby sounded like a joke. He admitted that Belle was the first woman in his life whom he did not dislike, and he actually really wanted to get to know her better. In the morning, Bella woke up in the palace, and such a rare opportunity did not present itself often. But due to Argus's sudden proposal yesterday, she couldn't sleep all night. The girl was very worried. She probably looked tired after yesterday's events. Maids came to her early in the morning, and Bella only now realized how the women living in the palace were treated. It's no wonder so many women want to be the emperor's mistresses, they even end up losing their lives. The maids quickly chose a delicious and luxurious dress for her and announced that the lady had guests. It was Mr. Argus and Georgie, and they wished the girl a pleasant good day. Georgie was surprised that Duke Razam had also decided to see Miss Belle early in the morning. Argus replied that His Majesty had asked him to diversify her stay, while Georgie came to convey an invitation to an Imperial hunting competition, to which he would like to invite Miss Belle. The girl said she was very happy to receive such an offer, but she didn't know how to ride a horse. Lolo warned that a new task has been activated, and in the competition, the girl needs to scare the main character's horse so that the hero has a chance to save the beauty. Georgie happily said that horseback riding was very easy. If the lady allowed it, he could teach her. Bella understood that if she wanted to complete the task, then she probably needed to learn how to ride a horse. And she should not refuse a master. But Argus said he understood horseback riding better than the Marquis and could very well teach her himself. This situation was very strange, and now in front of her were two young men fiercely wanting to teach her riding. The girl did not expect such a situation to happen and did not know what to do correctly. A person's life is full of choices, and a wrong decision often reduces all our efforts to nothing. When she chose to be reborn, she clearly decided for herself that she would never again allow anyone to ruin her happy life. Therefore, she had long since decided whose hand she was truly willing to take. And in fact, she did not want to choose either of the young men to avoid unpleasant rumors about her. She had long since decided that she wanted to be the only beautiful passerby, and that she would stay away from all the plot characters. So the girl proposed holding a contest, and whoever wins between the boys will teach her. The young men clearly did not expect to hear such an answer from her, but they had no choice but to accept her terms. Argus invited his brother to start without further ado, and understood that it was impossible to let this girl fall into their hands. While the young men settled things between themselves, Bella went to refresh herself. And there was a lot of delicious food here. A maid approached her with a tray containing many sweets and asked what the beautiful lady wanted. The girl understood that such places had more traps than usual, so she asked if she would have to pay for something. But the maid laughed and replied that everything here was free. There were already many rumors about Bella in secular society. Many were indignant at how she dared to ask the Marquis of Arundel and the Duke of Razam to teach her horseback riding. Syl was also here, who was very surprised to see Bella, who could appear here along with the Marquis. And the Duke. Syl supposed that, after all her loving words were lies, and the young man sitting next to him said he loved dealing with such pompous ladies. Syl meant that the lady might soon get into trouble because of her behavior. This young man fiercely wished to show the girl where she belonged, so he had the audacity to approach her and ask her if she had come here alone. He said he was well trained in riding and offered to teach the girl. People invited him to join the contest of the Marquis of Arundel and the Duke of Razam, if he also wanted to become a master. The young man called the girl arrogant, but the lady was indignant that a man without a title addressed her in that way. She said that according to Imperial law, he must address her as Countess Karen, or else he could send him to prison for disrespect. The young man grabbed the girl by the shirt and threateningly declared that he had not heard that a new countess had appeared in recent days, and that he was sure that the lady was clearly lying. She asked him to let her go as long as there were no consequences, But the young man was not going to follow the example of a fragile girl who dared to speak to him in that tone. Sil intervened in their conversation, immediately taking the insolent man's hand holding the girl, and urgently ordered him to let her go. He asked if the girl was okay, and she thanked him very much for his help. She asked the young man to get out of her sight and warned him that she was no longer ready to see him next to her, since she was his woman. The young man said goodbye, apologized, and left. And the lady respectfully thanked the young man for being there at the right time. She said that the girl has a good ability to attract attention, and her ability to flirt with so many men at the same time deserves applause. The girl said it was not her fault at all, and it is noticeable that the men themselves approach her and pay attention to her. But she shouldn't have ruined her image, so the girl smiled and said that Mr. Sil was the only one in her heart, and that, in fact, she was secretly spying on him. The young man noticed that she had been looking at him this whole time, but the lady did not once keep her gaze on him. And most likely all her words were a complete lie. He asked her to answer honestly that Argus had sent her to approach him. But the girl said it hurt her to hear those words from him, and it was obvious that she had deep feelings for him. Sil said that if she were Argus's man, then he could allocate more funds and find someone smarter, so the lady is not his type at all. And after these words, the girl wanted to answer him with a scathing slap. But the lady continued to play her part and replied, "It doesn't matter if he likes her or not. The most important thing is that she simply loves him." The young man suddenly approached her and hugged her, whispering in her ear that he wanted to see how long their affection would last. If it was true. He reminded her that his brother was not someone who was easily fooled, and that if she tried to sit on two boats, he would not let it go. Lolo sadly said that the hostess should look back, and the girl feared that there really was someone behind her. And obviously, Argus reappeared at a time when Bella found herself in a very strange situation again. Sil told his brother not to misunderstand him. It was just that the lady was in trouble, and he offered to help her. After all, he couldn't just watch someone get into trouble. Argus suggested that the girl probably didn't have time to watch the competition because her beloved man was here. Sil at that moment decided to say goodbye and said that the two of them probably needed to be alone, and that he wouldn't bother them anymore. The girl understood that everything she was doing was necessary for the task, and she couldn't tell Argus about it. He suddenly approached her and admitted that he had never made such an effort for a woman. But since meeting her, he started following her every step. He couldn't take his eyes off her. And he didn't understand what she was doing to him, as the young man was not at all like him. He hugged her and told her that he had changed his mind and could no longer wait for an answer. So he asked her to marry him and promised to give her everything she wanted. He asked her to stop looking at others and stay with him forever, without stopping hugging her. Belle did not expect Mr. Argus to behave this way and asked what etiquette she should follow. But when she confessed her love to Sil, she didn't care about that etiquette either. He looked at her and asked if she had a double standard because of love, and asked again if Belle Karen would marry him. Argus was doomed to lose to the main character. He had a sad end, so if the girl marries him, she will be killed along with him, simply because she is the villain's wife. She called Lolo because the girl urgently needed help, but he told her that the system could not help her, and that she had to face difficulties alone. Bella declared that she would marry the villain, then she would make sure he couldn't escape her love for him, and that she would enjoy the peaceful city every day. She would stop trying to become the head of the family. She would give up her career and retire, and let all the plot tasks go to hell. The girl finally decided to change the plot and looked sincerely into Mr. Argus's eyes. After looking at her, the young man had the feeling that his head was completely empty, and he didn't understand anything to tell her. He remembered that he had won a race against the Marquis and went after Miss Belle. But when he saw her, he completely lost his mind. The girl said in a soft voice that she knew he would win, and that if Argus became her master, she would quickly learn everything. The young man said that Bella should not worry and promised to make sure she would be the brightest lady in the competition. The girl thanked the young man for his determination and really hoped that the conversation about the wedding would be postponed. Argus left first, having finished his lessons, and the secondary character still could not ignore Bella. The lady said that the Marquis probably had a lot to do, so he didn't need to be accompanied. She could take a walk herself. In the original, the Marquis was the only illegitimate son of the king, although he received the title of Marquis. But the nobles despised him. Following his mother's plan, he started working with Argus, and in the end he lost to the main character. And he died a painful death on the desired throne. The girl did not understand where people got so much greed, since the king feeds them and clothes them, but with her, it was a completely different story for the sake of survival. She planned every step, worrying even about what she ate even though she wasn't hungry yet. While walking with the Marquis, a carriage heading quickly towards them crossed their path. Therefore, the lady, with a skillful move, took the Marquis's hand and pushed him out of the way. And the young man was surprised that this fragile lady had just protected him. The Marquis understood that he had nothing to repay the girl for the fact that she had just saved him, and offered to give her his life. He said that he and his mother adore Bella very much, and if she marries him, he will cherish her greatly. The girl replied that she was very sorry, but she had just inherited the title. And she had no intention of marrying, and the Marquis was stunned by her response. She asked him not to say anything like that in the future, and not to count on her wedding. While walking, the girl asked the Marquis what that place was. This building was in no way inferior to the luxury of the palace, and Georgie said that this was an imperial temple. Nobles could enter there freely, and he invited the girl to enter and take a look. It was the first time the girl saw such a majestic temple, as in her lands there was only a small church. She had heard that to build a temple, one needed permission from the Pope. In the original, the Pope was mysterious and powerful, and there were rumors about him that he was an oracle. And he could predict the future. But the temple was not part of Heidi's environment, rather it served as a set. And very little plot dedicated to the temple was plotted. They entered the temple, and the girl felt very strange here. The young man pointed to the statue and said that it was Flora, the goddess of flowers, and there were rumors that she sent her seeds to this planet to protect all people. And the one sent by the goddess is called Son of God, and the country that receives her power will receive power over the entire continent. This is not mentioned in the original, but the girl was surprised how strong the young man was. It is said that the goddess grants the wishes of her devout followers, after which everyone sincerely prays before her. And make wishes. The girl asked if the Marquis believed that this goddess could really grant any of his wishes. He confidently replied that a goddess is an omnipotent deity and that Miss Bell should not doubt that power, because it is disrespectful to Flora. The girl closed her eyes and crossed her hands. She asked the flower goddess to give her money that she could never spend. The young man laughed and said that it was vulgar to ask the goddess for money and as a noblewoman, and that it was better to change the wish to something more noble that suited her status. The girl tried again and now asked the goddess to bring her dead father back to life. The girl tried to prove to Georgie that the goddess was not omnipotent, but he was also sure that he would be in trouble if the employees overheard such things. While Bella was saying these words, not far from them was a young man who overheard their conversation. He heard that the girl was the first to doubt God's power, so he asked the servant to go find out who she was. The young man said that his father had urgently called him, so he could no longer accompany her. The girl smiled politely at him and said it was okay if the Marquis took care of his business. But in reality, she was waiting for the moment when he would finally leave her alone. As they said goodbye, he kissed her hand and promised to win the sacred medal for her on the day of the competition. The Marquis said that she would definitely become the most dazzling lady in the empire, and that he would do everything possible to make this happen. This was not the first time the girl had heard this phrase, and these words sounded incredibly familiar to her. The sacred medal was special, awarded by the Imperial family to the person who caught the largest prey in the first hunting competition of the year. And it was considered a special honor. This custom dates back to antiquity and was considered the most romantic story. When a noble gives his beloved a sacred medal, he thus secures a happy marriage. For women, the sacred medal was a symbol of love, and every girl hoped to find her soulmate in a hunting competition. And this was approximately the story of the original. Bella naturally understood that this move was added for the main characters. And Lolo confirmed that Seal would win a medal in the competition and give it to Heidi, thus further strengthening the bond between them. Her task as a passerby was at that moment to create a problematic situation and thus make it difficult for her to get a medal. But what if the villain or a secondary character takes the medal from the main character? The girl understood that all this was just her unrealistic dreams. The next morning, in the Imperial Palace, Bella sat at a table full of her favorite delicacies. The girl thanked the maid for her attention. She had not yet completed all the procedures to receive the title. But she was happy to know that they were addressing her by status. The girl felt the taste of power for the first time, but it would have been even more wonderful if Argus hadn't been sitting at the table with her, who was conscientiously fulfilling the emperor's task. The young man asked the girl to eat slower so she wouldn't accidentally choke at the table. Out of decency, she invited the young man to eat with her, and to her surprise, Argus quickly accepted. The young man sat closer to her and asked if the menu was really made according to her preferences. Argus said that if she wanted, he could send a cook to her estate to prepare delicious dishes for her. The girl suggested that the young man was probably trying to fit into her circle, so she refused his offer. By the way, she had already broken off relations with her stepmother, and upon arrival, she had to take care of the estate. But she didn't even have her own servants, which is not very good for a noble. After these thoughts, she told the young man that she would like to visit the slave market, and asked if he could accompany her there. She was sure that if he was with her, she would not be afraid of any misfortune. But she completely forgot that he hates women, so pleasing the hero will yield no fruit. He thought for a while and replied that if the lady promises not to leave him for a single step, then he can take her there. That same day, they went to the slave market, and the lady saw for the first time the cruel reality that was happening there. The girl looked with frightened eyes at the chain people who asked her to buy them. And it was the slave market itself that looked terrible. Argus noticed that the lady was seriously frightened and said that he had warned her that this place was not for noble ladies. He took her hand and warned her that from now on she should not let go of him for a moment. Otherwise, he could not guarantee her safety. Something terrible always happened in this place. And this time, right in front of them, one of the young men was whipping a young man. The people around saw how the young man was beaten, and he could have died before their eyes. But no one dared to interfere in others' business because he was a noble. Bella was interested in what was happening and asked the girl next to her what had happened there. She said that prisoners of war stumbled upon a noble and are now being punished for it in public. Belle was horrified, even if they made some mistakes. This is no reason to beat them, because they could die in front of everyone. Argus reported that the Empire's laws only apply to the nobility, and privileged nobles will have no liability for murder, whether it's a civilian or a slave. Tears appeared in Bella's eyes, and she shouted that life is not a toy, and that it cannot be trampled on so easily because of the class division. The young man, who had received numerous lashes, was bleeding and almost unconscious, and his younger brother was next to him. The young man patted his younger brother's head and apologized for not being able to protect him. But the boy was sure it wasn't his fault and did his best for him. The boy was sure that if it weren't for his mistake, this definitely wouldn't have happened, and no one would have punished his brother. The young man who struck the blows smiled at her deep feelings and promised that they would definitely die together, and they would be thrown to feed the wolves. Belle shouted loudly at them to stop urgently and halt this horror that was happening here. This scene was truly full of cruelty, and Bella shouted that the young man could not do this to them. Argus noticed that the lady let go of his hand, which he had told her not to let go of under any circumstances. But she was an incredibly mischievous woman. The young man who was threatening the people asked who the unknown beauty standing in front of him was. He shouted her name, Bill Curran, loudly in front of everyone, and people were surprised at how brave this girl was to speak out against what was happening. The young man replied that he had heard that the father of this family had a very beautiful daughter. And seeing her today, he realized that the rumors were not just idle talk. Belle frowned and asked the young man to stop talking nonsense and invited him to tell her what he wanted for the release of these people. The young man and his little brother did not expect someone to defend them, so now they looked with frightened eyes at how events would unfold. The young man said that these slaves treated him very disrespectfully and that insulting aristocrats is a criminal offense. So he would only punish them a little, and that the girl should not meddle in their own affairs. This young man was truly cold-blooded because he mocked living people in public. Unexpectedly, he invited her to spend the night with him, in exchange for releasing the prisoners. He shamelessly touched the girl's face and told her that if she followed him, he would not only forgive the slaves, but he would also give money to her poor territories. Argus did not observe how this insolent one behaved towards the lady, so he grabbed her hand and touched Bella's face. The young man prayed that Argus was hurting him and asked him to quickly release his hand. But Argus was not one to simply ignore this situation, so he asked how the young man dared to touch this girl's hair. And most likely after that, he would have to cut off his hand for this act. And the main villain's speech sounded very threatening. After Argus threatened the young man, he apologized to Mr. Razam and asked his forgiveness for his mistake, because he did not know that this lady belonged to him. Belle considered this attitude indecent and disrespectful, and even if she is not his friend, that does not give him the right to insult her. This young man knew that the Karen family had been in decline for a long time, and that this girl had sold herself to the Razam family, and now he still had an idea about himself. Who knows what? Bella asked him if he owned these people, and he replied that he had literally just bought these slaves. The insolent one lied by saying that he supposedly punished them for disobedience. But the child shouted that all his words were a pathetic lie. The young man looked at the child with contempt and replied that he bought him, therefore he is his property, and he can do whatever he wants with him. This child's brother, who was being whipped, asked the girl to save his brother, since he was still young and had his whole life ahead of him. Belle understood. She really felt sorry for these people, and she would have bought slaves here anyway. So she could not let them stay here to die. Therefore, she asked the young man to tell her the price for which he was willing to sell these two brothers. Argus asked if the girl really wanted to buy them, and she understood that it was very important for her to do a good deed, because the emperor gave her a lot of money anyway. Argus was sure that one of them would die soon. The other was already half dead, and there was a high probability that both would not live long. And in that case, why spend money on these people? Belle said maybe Mr. Argus is right, but she cannot watch innocent young men being killed before her eyes. Argus agreed with her decision. In any case, he could never understand what was going on in this girl's head, and he assumed that this was why he was attracted to her. The young man said, if Miss Belle wants to buy these slaves, she can pay 1 gold coin right now. On the continent, slaves were a very cheap commodity. Their cost ranged from 1 copper coin to 1 silver coin, and sometimes food could even be used, or some items as payment. The young man stated that these slaves have their own past, a royal captain and a knight of the kingdom of Leor. And if Bella wants the heads of the knights, she will have to pay. The girl was surprised that a royal knight appeared in front of her. But no matter what status you have, after defeat, you can only become something in the hands of the nobility. The child sat next to his brother and asked if this unknown lady really wanted to spend so much money to buy them. The young man considered Belle someone who probably couldn't afford such a thing, and wondered how long she would continue to despise him. He was sure that no matter how valuable a slave was to me, he resisted it and tried to hurt him, and no one would dare to insult the dignity of a noble. That's why these people deserve punishment. Argus offered to pay for these 2 people for Bella, but the girl refused the offer. The young man said, Bella has been hesitating for a long time, and 1 hair of a noble is worth more than these 2 slaves. The girl smiled, pulled a hair from her head, and handed it to the young man, telling him that she was also a noblewoman, and that she would like to trade her hair for 2 slaves. Argus was surprised by how the lady had the courage to tell such an impudent person to his face. But he even joyfully confirmed her words publicly. The young man was bewildered, because his words were only a metaphor and did not mean at all that people could be paid for with hair. Belle was surprised. She plucked the hair from her head, and the young man was really going to joke about her right now about the payment. Argus told the young man, it seems the payment was negotiated separately, but harming a noble is a crime. And if he wants her to stay, he should give them 2 slaves. The girl confirmed that she had a very bad headache from pulling out her hair, and Argus promised to stand by her until the end. After a while, the lady had in her hands the contract for the lives of these 2 young men. And her plan succeeded again. She joyfully declared that she was now the mistress of these 2 brothers, and was sure that from now on they would be loyal to her. The older brother promised that they would do everything possible to repay the girl for her kindness. The boys were surprised by how strange this girl was, as she was interested in their wishes. After the slave market, Argus and Bella arrived at the Imperial palace and immediately placed her older brother on the bed to provide him with medical care. Belle patted the child's head and told him Mr. Argus called the Imperial doctor, so he shouldn't worry too much and his brother will get better soon. Argus asked if the girl was too kind to these strangers, and no noble would treat a slave, but simply leave him to his fate. The girl replied that their evil thoughts scared her, and that in life there are no differences between high classes and low ones. People are only born in different conditions, and no one's life can be more valuable than another's. The maid informed Mr. Argus that Dr. Ed had arrived and was waiting for him. Argus introduced the girl to Dr. Ed, who was a very powerful mage and healer. And he was also His Majesty's doctor. A tall young man, wearing glasses and a dark blue velvet suit, entered the room and asked who among those present was injured. The lady replied that they were fine, but that their services were harmed, and begged him to help them. Ed was surprised that they had brought him in such a hurry, but not for an important rank, but simply for the sake of the servants. The girl asked the doctor not to hesitate and quickly examine the man lying on the bed, because he was barely breathing anymore. Argus saw how worried the girl was about these people and asked her if he would get hurt. She would worry about him too. The girl tried to joke by saying that Mr. Argus was so strong and that nothing would happen to him. But she still answered his question with consent. The doctor approached the young man's brother and asked him to leave so he could examine him calmly. He said he would treat his wound first, and with his hands he drew a shining magic circle in the center of which were unusual symbols. The girl thanked the doctor for arriving so quickly and agreeing to help them at such a late hour. Fire appeared on the palms of the young men. The girl was afraid that the doctor was using fire magic. But the doctor said that fire magic is used to stop bleeding and prevent infection. And the girl completely forgot that, in this novel, divine power is above everything. And people believe in fate and gods. After a while, Bella thanked the doctor for his help and told him that her servant no longer needed his treatment, and that he could be free. The child did not understand what was happening and why the doctor came and did not heal his brother. And Bella did not keep her word. The child stood next to his injured brother and cried that there were only liars and that no one took pity on them. Argus asked the child to mind his tongue because this girl did everything she could to help them. The girl understood that the child was still just a child, so he could not contain strong feelings. And he was impudent towards others. She approached him, smiled sweetly, and asked if he had really said that he would not treat his older brother. Argus did not understand why the girl kept playing the role of a loving mother towards them after those words. To avoid using magic, the girl wanted to disinfect the young man's wounds herself. But she didn't have medicine. Therefore, she decided to build the most banal device for purifying alcohol, because the most effective way to disinfect wounds is iodized alcohol. The girl told Argus and the child that with this small amount of alcohol, they can disinfect the wound to prevent blood poisoning. The child wondered if he could really save his brother, and had never heard of court ladies with such healing abilities. The girl could not promise him that she would heal him, but she promised to do everything in her power. Since they had no antipyretics, Bella asked the child to wipe his brother with cold water from time to time. And Argus was surprised where the lady got such knowledge from. Belle said that it was written in the manual of the first Earl of Karen, because 3 great families set out to sea to explore new lands. Versed. Chapter. Karen spent his entire life writing stories, jokes, and all sorts of sea stories, and managed to prevent infections. Argus thought Bella is only 17 years old. She couldn't know such a thing. The Razam family returned from the dead without leaving any useful information. But they only brought a curse upon people that turned them into monsters. If he could read these notes, he could find out what happened to the Razam family and how to break this curse. And then he could marry Bella and have children. While Mr. Argus was thinking about this, he had been looking at Abel the whole time, who noticed how the young man had been staring at her for a long time. Now Argus could not ask for such a thing, otherwise the lady might misunderstand him. And to quickly win the approval of her heart, he should respect and support her. The next day, news spread throughout the temple that an unknown girl had recently rescued the crown prince of the kingdom from a slave market. His Holiness, upon hearing this news, wondered who could afford to do this. The servant replied, "This girl's name is Belkarin. She is the Countess of the Nazlands, and it was she who questioned God's will that day in the temple." The young man wondered who the little noblewoman was, and the prophecy was broken because the child who should have died came back to life. And it seems that His Holiness was very eager to meet this girl, to get acquainted personally. Several days have passed, and the child still hadn't gotten up from his older brother's bed. And he hoped that he would finally wake up. They stayed alone with his brother because his father, the Emperor, suffered a tragedy. And on his last day, he asked the child to learn to face difficulties alone. Then the son asked his father to accompany him, but the man warned him to look for Orlando, who would help him leave and hide. That day, his kingdom of Luger was attacked by warriors, and the emperor had to save his kingdom and his children at the cost of his own life. To protect the child, Duke Orlando exchanged him with his son, thus sacrificing his only legitimate son. They escaped the palace and mingled with the prisoners of war to board the slaver ship. They finally reached the empire of Charlemagne, but unfortunately fell into the hands of the nobility. But at the last moment, the countess extended a hand to him and saved him from certain death. The child perfectly understood that if it hadn't been for this girl, he and his brother would have died a long time ago. The girl brought medicine for the young man and touched his forehead to check if the temperature had gone down. The girl said that he no longer had a fever and asked the child from now on to live happily. And that would be the best thank you for her. Bella asked what the child's name was, and he replied that slaves had no name, that the kingdom of Ubar passed into the hands of the Fry Empire, and that he was no longer a prince. The girl asked him if he would mind if she was William, and they named his brother Green. The child thanked the caring lady because she had given them a name and promised that from now on his heart would beat only for her. The girl looked closely at the child and gave him important advice that every person has their own life, and that it is not worth living for the sake of others, but it is worth living it for oneself. She perfectly remembered her past life, when she spent 20 years of her life paying off other people's debts, and ended up dying absurdly and uselessly. After this, the girl and Argus walked together in the courtyard of the Imperial palace. For several days now, Argus has not left the girl's side by a single step and is constantly near her. The lady asked if the title procedure was completed, and the young man did not have to visit her every day, promising not to tell His Majesty. Argus approached her and sincerely replied that she was more important to him than the emperor's words. He asked her if Belkarin was really that blind or just making fun of him, and did not see that he had given her his heart. It seemed that the young man's words really came from his heart, because his persistence surprised even Bella. She approached his face and looked into his kind eyes, as if wanting to tell him 1,000 words. but they couldn't find a single one. At that very close moment, a child ran up to them and happily announced that his brother had finally woken up. Argus was angry because he never managed to kiss Belle, and she, in turn, was very happy to have managed to avoid this awkward moment. The child ran into the room and hugged his brother, whom he missed very much, and feared that he would never wake up again. First of all, the young man told the lady that he was very grateful to her for her help, and that he didn't even know how to thank her. He said that the one they should thank was Mr. Argus, because for him it was a matter of honor to leave them. And heir. In any case, the young man was sure that these two were their saviors, and he knelt down to express his gratitude. Argus informed them that from now on he would serve the count and must obey his master. The young man thought, now he and the crown prince have no roof over their heads. If these people find out that his highness is alive, they will surely hunt him down to kill him. But if he takes advantage of the servant's advantageous position, he can protect himself from danger. The child ran to his brother and told him that the lady had given them new names. Now his name is William, and his older brother is Green. The young man bowed to Belle and thanked her for giving them new names. And it was an honor for them. The girl asked how many prisoners like him from the kingdom of Lubar ended up in the empire of Charlemagne. Green asked if she meant the knights, and the lady agreed. He knew there were 12 other knights like them who arrived in this kingdom with a caravan. Many of them, having ended up in the captive market, were immediately bought. On this continent, the knight is one of the symbols of noble nobles. The number of knights indicated the degree of influence of the aristocrats and the position they held in society. Bella started to think that if she wanted to develop sugar production in Naz, she should have enough troops to defend the territory, and this would be safer than looking for a husband. The girl told the young man that there are now fewer than 10 knights in the territory of Naz, and there is no cavalry to speak of, and she wanted him to rescue all the knights of the Ubar kingdom. And the young man happily agreed. Tomorrow was supposed to be a hunting competition, and Argus apologized to Bella, telling her that he would like to be there in his own name, but they could not go together. He asked if she was going back to Nuz after the end of the competition. The girl said she wanted to establish sugar production and sales, deal with her stepmother's gossip, and hire a new maid. The young man came up behind her and put a ring on her finger, which was magical. And it was called Argus's space ring. He said that when a person is in danger, they can hide inside it. The girl was worried about not being able to accept something so valuable, because all magical artifacts cost a fortune. The young man replied that there is nothing more important than the girl by his side. Bella came to the competition, which was to take place at the emperor's home estate. And the servant told her that these horses were specially selected by His Majesty. She chose one from several stallion options, and the servant said he would help the girl saddle the horse. This time, all the nobles were present at the contest, except for a few people who could not attend for personal reasons. That's why this time, the competition is really very crowded and lively. This estate was intended less for the entertainment of aristocrats and more as a platform for political intrigue. As indicated in the original story, the main character, Syl, cannot present himself before the emperor, just like his brother Argus. That's why he is determined to win the holy medal and present himself personally to the public. Belle felt as if she had just looked at the villain, and after that she wanted to hide quickly. But after that, she thought that she was a respected Karen countess and had absolutely nothing to fear. While the girl was lost in thought, Mr. Argus himself appeared before her like a ghost. The lady was afraid of how silently the young man could approach, and joked that he had used displacement magic. He approached the girl and asked her if she was really not afraid of his sudden appearance. He realized that she was just looking around and assumed she was looking for him. And that Belle had just been caught red-handed. Argus took her hand and asked why she hadn't put on that ring, and the girl replied that she had an errand today, and she was afraid of breaking it. The young man said that in case of danger, he would not force her to use the power of the ring, so the lady should not be afraid of breaking it. He asked if Syl would be at the competition today, and that's why she doesn't want to use his gift. So that there would be no misunderstandings and unnecessary questions. He moved even closer to her, so much so that Belle began to worry noticeably. The young man hugged her and asked what else he should do for her to abandon Mr. Sill forever. Belle admitted that she had left him a long time ago and that she was not in love with him at all. And at that moment Sill approached them, asking her if, after a few days apart, her feelings had cooled down so quickly. The girl did not understand why the main character appeared at that very moment. And Argus was already determined to have a serious conversation. Sill asked his brother not to forget that he also has Razam family blood and has more rights to participate in the house. The young man suddenly asked if Mrs. Bell had a relationship with his brother. The girl replied threateningly that she and Mr. Argus were just friends and that there was nothing serious between them. But Sill affirmed that he heard how his brother gave her a magic ring left to him by his mother, and usually friends do not give such gifts. Argus asked his brother to practice horse hunting instead of spreading gossip, so as not to dishonor his family. Sill was sure that his brother only wanted to keep the girl, putting him in an awkward situation. So he advised him not to deceive himself and to leave her as soon as possible. Argus remained silent at these words, and Bella stood behind him and waited to see how this would end. The villain of the play is really such a person. He lacked the love of his parents before and only loved himself. From childhood to adulthood, he oppressed the main character in everything to prove his strength. Argus asked if the girl was okay and promised to prove to her that he was in love with her and that he had nothing to do with anything. The majestic horn sounded at the annual Imperial hunting competition. A group of main characters was already ready to act, challenging others in the fight for the sacred medallion. Except for one lady, whose horse did not obey her at all and refused to illegible/cut off text. In the right direction. Argus was the first to kill a wild boar, then CL caught a hare that was chasing him. Lolo told the girl that she should definitely complete the task, and now Heidi is heading in her direction. The girl didn't have to be afraid of anything, because the original character couldn't kill her. And the task had to be completed. The girl closed her eyes and stopped in front of the horse, hoping it would be scared and take Heidi away. But at that moment, Argus approached Bella out of nowhere. The girl was very surprised how this young man was right there at the right moment again. He asked the girl to stay away, as it was not completely safe here. The lady could not do anything, but she understood that in that case the task would be failed. Heidi's horse, upon seeing Bella, reared up. The girl was very scared, but at that moment, Mr. Seal did not approach her and asked her if she was injured. The girl was so worried that she forgot that Ms. Bell was in front of her and the horse was afraid of her. Heidi asked Mr. Seal to quickly help her get to the spot because Ms. Bell might be injured and needs help. The young man was surprised why she was so worried about her, and they probably had some kind of friendly relationship. He helped Heidi off the horse and made sure the young lady was careful. He walked towards Belle and apologized because he didn't notice someone was in front of her. Bella replied that she was fine and wondered how kind the girl was, since it was obvious she had thrown herself under the horse. Argus asked, "She is the daughter of an honorable family, and the Duke really gave her a riding instructor before participating in competitions." Seal approached and asked his dear brother to continue with the competition, since everything was fine with the noble lady. Heidi was worried since Mr. Seal gave her his prey. Because of her, he might lose his victory. Heidi, frightened, even forgot that the competition was underway and that she was a representative of the Mountedon family. And she shouldn't have lost face. Heidi said she needed to leave urgently because she couldn't embarrass her father. Sil mounted his horse and shouted loudly that he would never allow his brother to take the sacred medal. Bella didn't know where her horse was, nor did she understand where this naughty animal was walking. Argus said there was nothing to be done and called his fast horse. He helped Bella get on the horse, and the girl did not expect him to decide to do this. Argus said that his horse knows the way, and that she can take him herself because the estate here is not safe for the lady. So he is very worried about her. He gave her his horse, but the competition was still going on, and Bella asked him what he was going to do without a horse. She said that she was also worried about him, and in this case, the young man invited her to accompany him and asked permission to sit next to her. This time he was very close to the girl, and the lady felt some discomfort. Argus whispered that the lady smelled very nice and said it was a new scent from her perfume. Suddenly they heard a rustle in the bushes and felt the horse start to behave strangely. Suddenly, a huge angry bear emerged from the bushes and headed towards Belle. And Argus, the lady said in a trembling voice that when encountering a bear one must remain calm. Otherwise it will get angry. Argus asked her not to worry because he could protect her, and then took out a magic bow and shot an arrow in the direction of the bear. The girl closed her eyes, and the last thing she saw were huge, sharp, gleaming fangs in the mouth of a huge wild beast. But after a few seconds, the bear fell and was defeated by a precise hit from Argus. The girl was afraid of how big the bear was, and how the young man managed to kill it with a single arrow. He said that he used arrows with magic, and that their speed compared to normal ones was much higher. Magic was not that simple. It depended not only on talent, but also on many other factors. So it was not accessible to everyone. The servant was only looking for the participants, and it turned out to be of great use. Because Argus asked him to take the dead bear and take it away, because he had the sacred metal in his pocket. The girl asked Mr. Argus to give her this bear, and understood that this was the only way out. And she could not allow him to take the sacred metal. It was the first time she asked for something. The young man nodded, because anyway, he was going to give the sacred metal to her. So it didn't matter at all who received it. He was very kind to her, and frankly admitted that he loved this girl for no reason. The emperor announced that the home competition was over, and the guests whispered about which of the participants had brought the prey. The emperor was about to announce the winner of the house, who would receive a lucky medal. He announced loudly that the participants, as always, did a good job. But the winner was Countess Karen of the Naz Kingdom. No one expected to hear this, and Seal, who was nearby, opened his eyes in surprise, not understanding how it was possible. Sasha was indignant. This year Seal was supposed to get the sacred medal, and he ruined her plan. And the only one who was happy for the girl was Heidi. The emperor's mistress, Catherine, noticed that Bella had an unexpected talent in this. Now she will become a celebrity in the empire, and they can benefit from this. The servant said that the medal should have belonged to Mr. Argus, but the young man believed that the main thing was that the girl was happy. And the rest was completely unimportant because she held a special place in his heart. Lolo remembered that if the hostess accepts the reward, this task will be considered a failure. The emperor announced that Countess Karen, once again, forced people to look at themselves from a new perspective. And she became the first noble lady in the empire to receive the sacred medal. He asked the girl if she wanted to say anything and solemnly handed her the award. The lady stated that she would like to hand over the sacred medal to Miss Heidi because she deserves it. The lady did not expect such an act and held her breath upon seeing how Mrs. Bell wanted to hand over her prize in front of everyone. The butler worried that it would be better to explain everything to the emperor, but Argus was sure that, since the medal belonged to Bella, she could do whatever she wanted with it. He realized that Belle Karen was very affectionate towards the daughter of Mountbit, and thought this was strange. At that moment, noble Bella, in front of all the guests, asked Lady Heidi to accept this sacred medal from her pure heart. Heidi was perplexed. Mrs. Bella was really not joking. She had heard that if the winner of the royal house gives away a sacred medal, then this is a sign of interest. Sasha approached them and told them that Countess Karen and her sister really have a wonderful relationship, since the girl unexpectedly gave her such an expensive gift. Sasha still couldn't leave Belle unattended, and more recently, she met a young man who told her that she had to find out how to become friends with the girl and obtain the technology for sugar extraction. Therefore, Sasha should now interact very politely with Belle, so she invited Countess Karen to a tea party. The girl replied that tomorrow she would return to Guinness and promised to visit them next time. But she didn't actually want to have any relationship with the villain. When the lady arrived at the Imperial Palace, she was greeted with shouts of joy by William, who had already heard that the lady had won the Imperial House and received the sacred medal. So Belle became not only the only female head of the family, but also the only woman who won the contest and defeated the representatives of other families. Green also congratulated the girl and handed her the box she had entrusted him to keep. The girl opened it and put on a beautiful ring, and he wondered if it was a gift from her lover. Bella hadn't had a lover for a long time, as she had a failed love in a past life. It was difficult for her to love someone with all her heart. If this were not the world of books and Argus were not an antihero from the books, maybe she could try. It was very difficult to find a second life, and she could not be with him until his death. But she admitted that she was actually in love with this young man. But she had to keep this feeling firmly in her heart and never doubt it. At Count Karen's estate, the lady was very nervous because her adopted daughter would return soon and would take away everything they had. The butler proposed a plan to her, which said that a lady met a bandit and was brutally murdered upon returning to Nuz. The lady was happy that this girl finally died, and in this case, Nuz would definitely belong to them. She believed that her future son would definitely become the head of the Karen family. So soon the Count's daughter would die, and they would reunite. The next morning, William and Green helped bring gifts, of which they sent many. They were gifts from the aristocracy, and William did not expect Bella to have so many connections in the capital. The girl replied that she was just a minor countess, and everyone wanted to benefit from her by selling sugar. And nothing else. Green handed the letter to the girl and told her that a servant from Duke Mountbatten's property had asked him to deliver it to her. The girl wondered if Miss Sasha really wanted to invite her to her estate again. But it was a letter from Heidi, who wrote her words of gratitude for the sacred medal she had given her in the competition. In the original, given Duke Mountbatten's bad temper, he would never have paid attention to a village girl just for the sacred medal. And he decided that Heidi could be used to profit from the sale of sugar. The girl asked if there was any message from Argus and if he had sent her anything. The girl decided that the young man was angry, but before leaving, she would like to see him at least with one eye, because she was afraid they would never meet again. The child saw that Bella was upset because there was no news from Argus, and asked her if she really liked this young man. She had been rejecting him for a long time, and it was not surprising that this happened. But the girl was not at all prepared for this. Lolo notified the owner that she had received a reward. This time, she received a map of the mines marking the mineral deposits in this world. If she managed it wisely, she could become very rich, but the conditions there were harsh. The territory did not belong to Agnaz, so Bella had no mining rights. Suddenly, she was informed that Mr. Argus had just arrived. The young man approached her in armor, and the girl did not understand why he was dressed as if he were preparing to go into battle. The Empire of Charlemagne and the kingdom have been hostile for a long time, and the Razam clan protects the borders of the empire. He confirmed that his father was injured, and he must go with reinforcements. And in case the girl is worried about Mr. Sill, she can calm down because he remained in the empire. In the original, Argus fought militantly on the battlefield instead of his injured father. The relationship between the main characters, Silam and Heidi, developed quickly, and he had the secret support of the Mountbatten family. The conspirators decided to kill Argus on the battlefield so they could easily transfer their spies to the Freezer Empire. And as a result, Argus could not break through and was wounded. He told the girl he would be absent for a while, so he assigned his man to protect her. And if everything was well with her, he would be calm. The lady felt that this young man was very kind to her, so she could not allow him to be falsely accused. And she said she had an important conversation with him and told him some facts. She said that despite all this, he had to be careful and that if he got hurt, she would be very worried. The young man wondered if what Belle Karen says is true. Sill and the family have an ace up their sleeve. Why is she so sure this will happen? The young man said he was afraid he might not see Belle next time, so he would like to ask her a favor. and allow him to kiss her. The girl felt embarrassed by such a proposal, and it was quite unexpected, because they were not in the same relationship at all. Argus said, "Her eyes say the opposite, and she is obviously undecided." Although the girl perfectly understood that no one could deny a kiss to the person she was in love with, Argus moved even closer to her and told her that in this case, he would not accept any objection. He tenderly hugged the girl, and at that moment Bella felt the strong beating of his heart. Argus simply kissed her on the forehead and told her that something would wait until she stopped hesitating and started to feel more comfortable with him. The strong emotions made it difficult for the girl to breathe, and her heart seemed to tear in different directions. William spent every day with Belle. This time he studied the map and wanted to know where Nass was. Belle thought that if she wanted to mine minerals, she first needed to study the state of the mine. And then this mountain could be included in Nass and receive mining rights. Suddenly, the carriage they were traveling in began to shake violently, and Bella got out to see what had happened. Suddenly, Green shouted loudly to the lady to be careful, as they were surrounded by robbers. Green said the way ahead was blocked, and it wouldn't be possible to go around the back either. The situation was very serious, so he would cover them, and the girl should run through the forest. Belle replied that William would go with her, and she would do everything possible to ensure that nothing happened to him. She took the boy by the hand and ran forward, and the robbers who saw her wanted to grab the noble and take her out alive. Belle told the boy that she was his target, so they should separate, but he was sure that he could not lose her. She said it was an order, and the boy had to go the other way, then return the same way and bring Grim to help her. She ran in the other direction, and the robbers who saw her chased her, so the boy had to play an important role to save her. The robbers caught up with Bella and threatened that the girl had nowhere else to run, and that she had better surrender. The lady was not one to give up quickly, so she remembered the ring Mr. Argus had given her. She closed her eyes, grabbed the ring, and believed it could protect her just like he did. Suddenly, the girl disappeared, and when she woke up, she felt very nauseous and did not expect that moving with the help of the ring could make her feel so sick. It seems that carelessly, she also twisted her ankle and ended up in a completely unknown place. She heard a person approaching her. It was a man who immediately apologized because he did not want to disturb the stranger. The boy found Green and told him that this group of people had been active since the time of the Emperor, and that they were not bandits, but hired assassins. One gang was from the kingdom of Fry, and it seems the royal family knows that the crown prince is alive. The robbers were tied up, and Green asked the crown prince how he should deal with them. He ordered him to kill everyone because they serve the wrong master. William was on the edge of a cliff and wondered why he constantly brings misfortune to his loved ones. First his father and the king did not suffer, and now Bella was in trouble. His brother argued that it was not his fault, he was the crown prince, so it was impossible to escape what he was born with. The boy shouted loudly that he no longer wanted to be the heir, but only wanted his father and Mrs. Bell to be alive and well. At that moment Belle, who met an unknown young man, asked him not to come closer and explain why he was wearing a mask. Judging by his clothes, he should not turn out to be from that gang of robbers, the young man replied. His name is Juan, and he is a wandering poet, and the mask is to hide the scars that frighten people. Bella apologized because she did not want to offend the young man and explained that she had just run into some robbers, and she was very scared. The girl was worried. William saw with his own eyes how she fell off the cliff, and probably he was scared too. She looked down exhausted and thought it would be fantastic if Argus were there to help her. Unexpectedly, he turned out to be the first person she had thought ill of, and after a short separation, she really started to miss him. She asked Juan to go to the cliff and tell the people who were there to come look for her, and that they should still be there. Since Bella had an injured leg, she asked Lolo to go out and help her. She said she had twisted her leg and probably deserved some form of compensation for the injury or medicine, but the entity replied that the system did not have a first aid function. The girl unexpectedly asked, when everything came to an end, if she could leave the novel. Lolo replied that he could not heal the owner's wounds, but he could show the actions of other important characters in the book. The lady understood that here she was simply a similar person, but for some reason she was very worried about the whereabouts of the main character. She really wanted to see where Argus was. Since he was about to fight, she wanted to see what he looked like after the fight. With the help of magic powers and Lolo, the girl was able to see how Argus was preparing at that moment to lead troops to reinforce the army, and discussed military strategy with his subordinates in advance. Things were very serious before the battle, and his companion insisted that if they attacked from the east, they should join forces with the Duke. Suddenly, Argus felt that someone was watching him, and Bella feared that her call had been discovered through time. The young man suddenly became thoughtful and looked extremely worried. Argus did not stay behind, and Belle did not expect to easily detect this surveillance system. The girl was still sitting near the tree, waiting for Juan to return, and she was afraid that it would soon get dark. And she probably shouldn't have trusted that stranger in the mask. If no one came to save her within half an hour, she decided to take the worst option and try to save herself. The girl heard unfamiliar voices next to her and realized that they were mercenaries searching for her body after she fell from such a height. They couldn't find any trace, but they were very close to the girl, who skillfully hid among the bushes behind the foliage. Since she couldn't escape them, Belle knew she couldn't let them find her in that state. So she decided to strike first. She picked up a cudgel and shouted loudly at the robbers not to come near her, but they tried to convince her that they were not going to kill, but only wanted to learn the technology of making sugar. But at that moment, the help she had been waiting for arrived just in time. It was you, William, Green, and Juan, who ran together towards the girl. William rushed to hug Bella and was glad that the girl was alive, while she apologized for worrying him. Green reported that the pursuers had finished, that the carriage was still in the same place, and ordered the soldiers to watch the servants so they wouldn't run away. The girl said that Green did everything right, and it was obvious to her that they could have simply run away while she fell off the cliff. But they stayed and turned out to be reliable people. Williams asked how the lady survived, having fallen from such a height. And the girl smiled and said she was lucky, but she still had an injured ankle. She knew that if it weren't for Argus's ring, she wouldn't have survived this time, and if they met again, she would no longer run away from her feelings. Juan approached the lady and returned the medallion she had given him at the beginning of the encounter. If it weren't for this man, she would have been very scared and doomed to certain death in the forest. He said he wanted to become her servant and would do whatever she told him to prove his loyalty. Currently, every kingdom is predatorily eyeing the Imperial heir's place. Wanting to capture him, the prophecy predicts 3 heirs. The heir of the kingdom of Lubar, named Mill. The heir of the empire of Charlemagne, Georgie Arundel. And also another young man, who is the heir of the Fry Empire. The Fry Empire, to destroy the heirs of other kingdoms, sent its spies to the royal families and deliberately started wars. Mill Crew, also known as William, and the kingdom of Lubar fell first. And it was interesting that in the Battle of the Heirs, he was a living pawn. But a minor count saved him. All this was quite suspicious, but the young man saved her anyway, so she said he could stay with her. He replied that in that case, starting from that day, he was completely at her disposal. After everything that happened, Bill and his friends discussed how things were going with the dead and injured. She asked William who he thought the attackers were. Green said there were 2 groups of people. Neither of them were bandits. One group were highly trained riders, and the second was sent by her stepmother. The girl could understand why her stepmother sent people to kill her, but once she returned to Nas, her good money would come to an end. William said there is another reason and people want to kill him. The boy understood that if he continues to hide the truth about himself, the lady may be in danger because of him. And she has the right to know the truth and decide whether she will stay with them or not. Green held his breath. His Highness was really going to reveal the whole truth about him being the crown prince. The girl laughed and did not understand why they should chase the boy, and even if he insulted the noble. She bought him, and he definitely wouldn't take revenge on him. Belle was sure that the boy was saying those words because he had been through a lot. But now it didn't matter at all who he was before. But Belle Karen was exactly the person William always wanted to be faithful to. So he decided to tell the whole truth. If being the crown prince can help this girl, then he will voluntarily become her weapon. The lady handed Green her medallion and asked him to order a trusted person tomorrow morning to take it to Count Karen's mansion for mourning, and to inform her stepmother of her death to see what lies she could come up with. But the truth is that, from that moment on, there were things that interested her greatly. And Juan did not take his eyes off her throughout the evening. She turned to him and asked if the young man could come closer to make a fire. The lady was sure that only thanks to Juan did evil turn into luck. And the young man saw in it a special blessing from the goddess that allowed him to meet her. In fact, the girl did not believe in any god, but recently she became more careful with her words. The young man said that the magic tower trains mages, and they believe that man has no power over the forces of nature. And the Holy Court is sure that everything was created by God, and he is the owner of all things. The Holy Court and the Magic Tower are two forces that usurp imperial power in the original work. They are not subject to fire or water, and they say the reason lies in the death of the widow ruler of the Frey Empire. She was the only student of His Holiness, but then she died at his hands. Not even ashes remained of her. The head of the Magic Tower was in love with the late Empress and was thirsty for revenge. And since then, the Tower and the Holy Court have been at odds. But Belle was skeptical of anything that could not be proven, but she did not insist on her point of view. She did not believe in magic or the supernatural, and relied solely on her knowledge and experience. Suddenly, they heard a noise coming from the bushes, and Mr. Green immediately drew his sword so that no one else could hurt Bella. But Mr. Argus appeared from the bushes, covered in blood and barely walking. The girl asked him to sit down so she could treat his wounds, and she was lucky that she had learned this last time Green got injured. She said she was very scared when he appeared covered in blood from the bushes. But it turned out that Argus sent his confidants to protect her, who used magic to warn him. The young man said that many people tried to protect her, but still let her fall off the cliff and hurt herself. She treated and bandaged his wound, saying that if the next time such a situation occurred, she could handle it herself. If she hadn't returned to save him, he wouldn't have been so seriously injured on the battlefield. So Bella felt that she always got in the way and brought misfortune. But the young man asked her not to think so, because it was thanks to her that he gained the strength to defend this country. And next to her, everything became incredibly important to him. Belle succumbed to weakness for only a minute, which is why she didn't want to lose the intimacy that had arisen between them. Until the young man finally made up his mind and tenderly kissed her on the lips. Juan looked at the couple and wondered who this injured young knight was. William replied that this young man was her beloved lover, but Green insisted that he was only her friend. Green said that this young man is the eldest heir of the Razam family named Argus. Green felt that Juan was untrustworthy and would try to meddle in other people's business. So he decided not to tell him everything he knew. Juan knew that the kingdom had partnered with the Imperial Chamber of Commerce to get close to Sil Razam. And at the same time, they decided to deal with his half-brother by using Sil as bait. Argus told the girl that his injury was fine, but the battle was not over yet, and that she should await his return. The girl asked the young man to take care of himself on the road and to be careful with the wound. Thanks to this information, they captured a spy from the Frey Empire. And now Argus can quickly finish the battle and return victorious. He took her hand and asked her to reconsider his marriage proposal. And he didn't want her to make a hasty decision. The girl didn't understand why he wanted this so badly, because it's obvious that nothing serious can happen between a passerby and a villain. Argus remembered that she had already rejected him once, and that he would see her again next time. And she can reject him hundreds of times, but he will try again, and no matter what happens, he will never give up on her. Soon, Bella's stepmother was informed that the girl had been killed, and the mistress soon filled with false grief at her funeral. The lady had been waiting a long time to deal with this girl, and she was very happy to have finally gotten rid of her. The butler announced in front of all the guests that the time had come to bury Mrs. Bell, and that everyone should say goodbye. Her stepmother tried to pretend to be a grieving stepmother and shed bitter tears near the coffin, which she knew was empty. All this time, Belle was nearby and did not expect that one day she could attend her own funeral. The solemn funeral speech ended, and the lady continued crying for her poor beautiful girl. The lady decided to appear at the most unexpected moment, so she approached her stepmother and asked her why everyone had gathered and was burying her. The lady fell to the ground scared and didn't understand how it was possible for this girl to still be alive. She grabbed the butler by the tie and shouted at him how this could happen, because he assured her that the lady was dead. But he was sure that the servants had definitely sent her the family coat of arms, confirming her death. Belle apologized for the mistake that happened today and apologized because they had come to see this comedy in vain. The lady said it was personal matters of the Karen family and they would solve it privately. And she understood that it was impossible to wash dirty laundry in public and that it was time to end this circus before problems started. Therefore, she asked everyone present to disperse and headed with her stepmother to the estate to finally talk about everything. The stepmother started blaming everything on her butler, who supposedly hired people to kill the lady. And this had nothing to do with her. They kept blaming each other. The human soul was certainly a darkness, and if something happened, then one would normally protect their lover and take the blame, but not in this case. But it turned out that love is completely unreliable, and only relationships united by common goals are eternal. Bella looked at her stepmother, who turned out to be a cruel person, and promised her that she would stay on the estate until the child was born. And then she would leave her forever. The mistress was surprised that the girl knew about her son and understood that this girl could now do anything. She shouted that she had raised her for so many years, and she couldn't do this to her. Juan asked why the lady didn't want to kill her stepmother, and was surprised that the young man looked so tyrannical. The girl was the first in the entire kingdom who dared to call him that. He said the lady is very generous, and it seems the people of Naz will really bless her. The servants and warriors who arrived by Bella's order were gathered, so she announced that starting today, she was the only mistress here. The next day, Argus brought his father the medicine he needed. The man asked where he got this medicine from, and Argus said he got it from a friend, and that he would probably introduce him soon. The emperor asked if he would be willing to sell them this tincture. That same day, the lady was in Karen's library, sorting important tax documents. William noticed that during this month the lady had barely slept. She was busy every day, and if this continues, her health might not withstand it. She told the boy not to worry because she used to manage projects, so she was used to working hard. At that moment, Juan and Green came to her library to tell her how things were going. Naz's sugar is sold all over the world. Its sales are supported by the royal court. The product is popular. If this continues, Naz will soon become rich. Green reported that the army provided by His Majesty had also arrived. A month ago, the news of his injury reached Charlemagne's ears, and he, learning that Bella had no army, sent his cavalry to protect her. Belle asked Green and Juan to prepare to meet them, and since their purpose was unclear, she decided to go meet them in person. The girl and her subordinates approached the guests and asked what their purpose was here. Georgie met her. He smiled and told her that it had been a long time since they saw Miss Belle. He asked if Count Arundel had really traveled a long way just to see her in person. Georgie said he heard his father selecting an army of knights for Naz, so he decided to go with them to see her. Belle said that since the situation in Naz is difficult now, maybe they should return to the capital as soon as possible. She thanked the young man for the proposal and told him that she could not marry, and that if he wanted to marry, he would have to join the Karen family. The young man unexpectedly accepted her proposal, and Bella never expected to hear his consent. Juan noticed that the situation between them was becoming more and more interesting. But at that moment, Argus approached them and loudly declared that this lady was against Georgie's proposal. Argus said that he really wanted to see the girl, that's why he was in such a hurry, and it seems he arrived on time again. Argus notified Georgie that he had already sent a letter to the Emperor, proposing marriage to the CRA. Velded. The Razam family has clear inheritance rules, and the only exception was Santranti. Georgie asked if it would be better to ask the opinion of the lady, who really wants to marry into the Razam family first. Argus looked menacingly at his interlocutor, who definitely did not want to end the dialogue with him. The girl understood that Argus did this because of her, and she was ready to sacrifice the title. So she couldn't let him face this alone, even though the fate of the main characters would change. And the world could disappear at any moment. After everything that happened, the girl was very lost and couldn't rest for long. Juan was worried about her condition, and the lady should probably rest. So he wanted to support her and asked if anything was bothering her. The girl asked him what he would choose, to be together with his beloved even if the world collapses. Or love only for a brief moment, save the world, and continue living. The young man replied that he would most likely choose to die, but to love. But it is better to live the present moment, because the present always determines the future. Belle wondered if she could go against the system and be with Argus, even if it meant changing the present. She understood that there must be another way out. And according to the original, Argus has now become a positive character, which is why the world began to collapse. And if she wants to save this world, then she needs to finish the story of the main characters. Perhaps, after all, there is a solution, and in order not to interrupt the flow of the plot, she can become the main villain. Juan noticed that it seemed Mrs. Belle had just found the right answer by herself. He ran to Argus, who had just finished practicing with the sword. And since she has chosen her future path, it would be good to tell him everything that was on her mind. Before the lady had time to knock on the door, the young man had already opened it. And he heard Belle addressing him from afar. He looked her in the eyes and asked why, now that she was here, she was going to leave again. Argus asked if the lady was thinking of rejecting his proposal from yesterday. But he still wasn't going to give up. Bella suddenly replied that he should listen to her carefully, and she agreed to marry him. The young man thought she was joking again, but the lady said she didn't seem like a person who would joke about such things. Argus replied that he was very happy to hear these words, and felt as if his heart was about to burst out of his chest. He tenderly kissed the girl and told her that from that day until the end of his days, he would belong only to her. The lady approached her subordinates and told them that today she had gathered them all to announce something. She said, everyone probably knows, that she recently inherited the title of Countess Karen and became the head of Naz. But the gap between Naz and other kingdoms is large. The people here are poor, the population has no army, and this is a reason for ridicule by other states. Belle thought about this issue for a long time and finally found a solution that would definitely help improve the state of the city. She introduced the young Count Razam to her subordinates and told them that he was her future husband. Argus promised them that after his wedding to Countess Karen, he would fully help her in building the new Naz. She wondered if Countess Karen was really thinking about uniting the territory and joining the Razam family. Bella understood that Argus must continue to fight for the position of head of the family so that the plot remains unchanged. And she must continue to interact with the main character. Juan noticed that the younger count liked this girl very much and promised to do everything possible to support them. Although they found strong allies, it has been known since antiquity that if you want to fight back, you need strong fists. Therefore, the lady will ask slaves and commoners to join the kings, and then strengthen their military power, and increase their army through trade. The young man said that this refusal offended chivalry, and the girl perfectly understood his feelings. Since not everyone can become a knight, because from early childhood they receive serious training. She knew that being knights is not an empty phrase, there is a large part of them. But without the power supporting them, they will be despised, and other orders will reach the territory. Everyone knew perfectly well that everything here depended on the chivalric orders of each kingdom. And in the empire of Charlemagne, there were 3 main chivalric orders. The lady could not allow slaves to simply become knights, and she asked for a selection to be held, after which they could enter the army reserve. And after hard training, the worthy ones could become knights. The girl asked to consider which of these commoners and slaves could become knights, and who deserved to be treated better than the king himself. The plot will develop up to this point, which means she still had time to prepare. And she should have had enough strength to compete with the main character. From now on, she will be able to become the new villain of the story and take Argus's place to protect her man. And finally, the girl said the last thing when the Knights of Naz break the defenses. She and the young Count Razam will get married. During his life, Bella's father became addicted to alcohol and did not pay much attention to the management of the kingdom, which caused a decline in the reputation of the Karen family, so she again developed sugar production and boost the kingdom's economy. The young man said that he would always support her choice, and even if she had nothing, he would agree to help her always. The lady asked why Mr. Argus had not yet returned home. As for the official residence of Razam, Argus was sure that his stepmother and his younger brother would only be happy if he didn't show up there. Belle told him that if he didn't return, the position of head of the family would immediately fall into the hands of his younger brother. And he really didn't want to become the head of the family. The young man heard that during his absence, his brother had firmly entered the circles of the aristocracy and felt quite secure there. In the original, when Argus was at war and strengthened his relationship with the nobles of the empire, he secretly met with a representative of the Fry Kingdom's Chamber of Commerce and made an illegal deal with him. The representative guaranteed collateral and assistance in accessing the markets of other kingdoms and support in the fight for the position of head of the family, but in return for this, Syl had to help eliminate Georgie's only heir. As a result, Syl had to help the ruling house stage a coup in the empire and place his heir on the throne because he wanted to become the head of the entire empire. The girl understood that if everything was left to chance, Naz would eventually become Syl's wallet, and all her efforts would eventually go to someone else. Argus said that under no circumstances could he allow his brother to continue acting without permission. At that moment, Syl had already been informed that sugar had recently conquered the market of the entire continent, and this affected the interests of the Fry Kingdom's Chamber of Commerce. The representative of the trade board really hoped that the young man would still get the technology to produce sugar and, in that case, they would agree to cooperate with him. The technology was invented by that girl, and now a large number of noble eyes turned towards her. Syl asked the representative to calm down and promised to find a way to obtain the technology. And he understood that this must be done before Argus. Therefore, he ordered the butler to prepare an invitation, and he himself prepared to go to Ignis and meet Miss Belle Karen in person. The butler reminded him that he had a meeting scheduled with Miss Heidi for that time. He asked to tell Heidi that they could visit Mrs. Karen together, and therefore, this girl definitely could not deny them a meeting. A few days later, Mr. Seal and Heidi arrived to meet their old friend. Heidi was very happy to see Mrs. Belle, who greeted the guests and asked them to come in to talk in a comfortable atmosphere. Belle asked Heidi to address her the same way as before, and nothing changed between them with the appearance of the title. Syl suddenly felt a strong flow of magic coming from someone nearby. But the masked young man said it was only a servant of Countess Karen. The guests, along with Bella, sat down at the table, on which there were many different sweets made from sugar. Heidi really liked one of the sweets, and Bella said they were made from white sugar. Heidi decided that Syl should definitely try this, because these sweets were incredibly tasty. But the lady suddenly became embarrassed, because she realized that she had suddenly started feeding the knight in front of the countess, which could undoubtedly cause her trouble. Mr. Seal refused, and to help the girl avoid trouble, Bella asked to give this delicious sweet to him. The lady asked if the gentleman in his letter said that he had a business related to trade, and if he knew what it could be. The young man said it was nothing, and that he only wanted to discuss a couple of questions with Countess Karen about sugar production. Belle said that she plans to supply products to vendors at below-market prices, thus helping the Karen family's chamber of commerce sell sugar. Belle turned to Heidi and asked what she would do if she were in her place. Yes, she was sure that she knew the market well, so the lady could be calm, and assured that, by giving the technology, the income would not be affected in any way. But she said that she already had a man to whom she was willing to give all this. And at that moment, her brother Argus greeted her. Belle asked if Argus had not yet returned home and why he was standing here. But the young man only had a small business here, which shouldn't take him much time. He hugged the girl and told her, the most important thing is that he missed her very much, so he couldn't stand it, and came over to hug her. Argus put on a very sweet face and asked if the lady really missed him. Sil asked why his brother was still here and hadn't returned home a couple of days ago. But the young man said he had come to see his future wife. Sil asked his brother not to joke like that because Countess Karen is not Saint Tranty. He was sure that Countess Karen was too young and hadn't heard about her family's rules regarding marriage. And according to tradition, young men could only marry women from certain circles. Belle decided to reveal the truth and said she was fully aware of everything. And besides that the young man was close to Mrs. Heidi only because she was Saint Tranty. Heidi, upon hearing this, got very upset, and Seal tried to get away with it by saying everything was completely wrong. Belle said that if she were Mrs. Heidi, who liked Mr. Seal, she would never marry him. In the original, the heroine Heidi is played by a village girl, and although she cannot do anything, there are characters who protect her from adversity, but the opponent she will face in the future will no longer be Argus. But Bella and her aura won't affect her as much, so she will be merciful to her. So, before confronting, Bella had to prepare everything to make Heidi a worthy opponent. The girl invited her to join her business and try to earn money, and guaranteed her to open the doors to a completely different world. Sil pointed out that the most important thing is what Heidi herself wants, since she has no friends in the Empire. Together with Mrs. Karen, she shouldn't feel so alone. Bella really wanted little Heidi to become the woman who would never depend on anyone. Sil asked if his father knew about Argus's secret engagement. Argus stated that he married the saint, which means that his father's beloved, illegitimate son would become the head of the family. But from now on, this didn't interest him. Although Argus didn't know what his brother was planning again, he knew for sure that Bella now belonged only to him. However, he was now facing the biggest challenge of his life, and could barely contain his joy upon seeing Countess Karen. Bella heard that her soldiers would soon bring recruits from neighboring lands, and if the nobility tried to stop them, Argus would be able to stop them. The young man replied that this was complete nonsense, and that the lady could easily trust her boyfriend. Argus stated that the Count and Sil are not that simple, they might use Heidi to discover the technology. But the lady asserted that no new technology is needed to reveal the secret of production. The next day, people gathered at Mrs. Bell's Chamber of Commerce. Heidi was surprised by how big the building was, and it was also very unusual that everyone was dressed the same. Belle said that these are employees of her Chamber of Commerce, and thanks to the same clothes, visitors can easily determine which of those present is an employee. A server approached Heidi and asked if she would like to have some delicious rare tea. Belle said it was a special order for her Chamber of Commerce, and that the tea was made with rose petals. The lady had many benefits, such as a good working environment, where employees would be more efficient and passionate about their work. Heidi was surprised, although they were the same age. This girl knew and understood much more than her. Belle set up a training ground in the courtyard so that people tired of work could come here and train. Belle was sure that Miss Heidi should expand her limits, and there are many good people in the world. And the light did not converge like a wedge upon a young man. They directed their attention to the young men who were fighting nearby, and Heidi recognized Mr. Seal's older brother. These warriors were truly amazing, and everyone around noticed it. Belle asked Argus if he was all right and if he was injured. And at that moment, the young man was distracted and lost to his opponent. Argus replied that there was nothing to worry about, and that it was just a duel where there was always a loser. And what he wanted more than anything in the world, he had already won. Argus asked why Belle decided to come to the training ground, and she said she was showing Mrs. Heidi the workplace. William happily ran towards the lady and wished her a good day. The boy saw an unfamiliar girl and asked if she was the lady's new maid. The boy told her that as the lady's servant, she must be loyal and responsible. Thus, the lady would not be strict with her. But Bella replied that William was mistaken and that this was the lady, the Count's youngest daughter, who would soon become her assistant in the Chamber of Commerce. The girl asked William to show Mrs. Heidi the Chamber of Commerce. And she still had a couple of things to do with Green. She asked how the field training was going and when her soldiers could go to the mountain. He said everything was ready, they could leave at any time, that the Chamber of Commerce would make huge profits from sugar sales, and that she was going to take advantage of this opportunity and propose to the emperor to include the Black Bear Mountains in the Naz land. Argus asked when the girl was going to the mountain. Otherwise, he couldn't go out with her too early, which means he couldn't protect her. Recently, the treaty between the Razam family and the Magic Tower expired. And Argus's father suggested that he would not recognize their marriage. The girl really didn't care what others thought, and as long as they were together. That was enough. The young man really hoped the lady would be happy, because he didn't want her to live even for a second those unhappy days he lived. This world is full of magic, and is ruled by a man with colossal magical power. There is a magic tower, and a holy temple where mages who have the strength to resist the ruler gather. In the original work, the younger sister of the head of the magic tower, Argus's own mother. To change and become a saint, she did not touch the sanctuary of the magic tower. Bella was worried about the young man and told him that she would definitely take care of everything. She knew that he had to lead the family for her, so she had to give him some motivation. And he wanted to prove what he was capable of, so that everyone would regret their dismissive attitude towards him. Argus asked if she was going to celebrate his 18th birthday and the inheritance ball together, and asked her to suggest a gift she would like. The next day, Juan was in Belle's office and had a small request for the girl. He said he was looking forward to resting, and she gladly let him go, because during this time he had helped a lot to put things in order in the Chamber of Commerce. Juan said he had prepared a gift for her and took out a magic hamster, hoping she would really like it. It was a special type of magic pet that was priceless, and its main feature was that it had storage space in its mouth. The girl immediately came up with a name. She called him Very Cute Bojo. The next day, many people gathered on the walls of the magic tower. And the young Count Razam and Countess Karen were also on the list. Every 3 years, the magic tower recruits students to strengthen relationships. And the most talented noble descendants are sent to the tower for training. Training. Heidi awakened her magic right during the selection process, so the head of the tower accepted her as an exception. So it was a good opportunity for her to go from being a village simpleton to a talented sorceress. That day Belle wore a cute bow and told Argus that it was Juan's gift for her ceremony. The young man wondered why this masked servant dared to approach his future wife again. But the lady asked him to calm down. Juan was a very skillful person, and she trusted him. Argus said he was upset because other men were giving her gifts for having become a lawyer before him. The girl was touched because Argus had just become jealous of her magic pet. At that moment, Syl approached them, and he was not alone, but with all members of the Razam family. With them was the Countess, who saw the young and beautiful Bella and was not surprised to be able to win the heart of her cold Argus. The girl bowed and greeted Count Razam, whom they had finally met. The man asked if she was really the same Belle Karen, whom his son secretly got engaged to. The Countess said she had heard that Mrs. Belle had previously tried to show signs of attention to Syl, and that now she was in a relationship with his brother. But the Count said that no matter what happened before, Argus is incredibly obsessed with Bella. But he is not going to accept their wedding. In this case, Belle decided to tell him that she didn't care about his attitude. Argus asked not to take his parents' words seriously, but the lady was quite calm and said that she was fine. Everyone said that marriage could be a blessing if it was blessed. But the lady really didn't care about that. Argus hugged her tightly and asked her to believe his words, because even without anyone's blessing, he would make her happy. At that moment, Heidi approached them and told them that today their parents had brought them to participate in the trial with the sacred crystal. She ran to Bella and told her that she was very happy to meet her and recognized her at first sight. Argus noticed that this girl, Heidi, had already crossed paths with Bella 3 times. The original story said that throughout the trial with the magic crystal, Argus was confused and looked quite tense. He saw his miserable life from childhood until today, how he was abandoned by his mother and ignored by his father. Besides this, his brother never loved him, and they had a very difficult relationship. As a result, his magical power was depleted, and the sacred crystals disappeared. And the magic tower clashed with the invisible afterwards. But now the original plot has changed, and Argus, who doesn't know his mother at all, can still pass this trial. After all, Argus's failures were created so that Heidi's magical power would awaken if this plot thread doesn't happen. Then the heroine will be completely destroyed. All these side plots were not written in the original. And the girl was not very interested in the story of the sacred crystal. She was more worried about whether Argus could pass the trial. Argus stated that he was obliged to pass the trial with the sacred crystal and asked the girl to wait for him. She confidently asked him to remember one important thing: she would always be by his side. And he would never be alone again. Heidi said that the younger Count definitely won't have any problems, and everything will turn out well for him. Argus should have placed his hand on the magic crystal and felt its power, and it would guide him to the most terrible corners. And hidden from his heart, Argus saw his childhood, when all the children called him a monster and didn't want to play with him. But the strangest thing is that he saw Bella approaching him, offering to bring him some sweets, and asking him not to cry because everything will be all right. She asked if the baby really had a terrible curse because of his mother, so that other children didn't want to be friends with him. The boy said that the children were afraid of him and that he was a monster, but the girl said that she wasn't afraid of him at all. She offered to be a good friend for him and said that he was definitely not a monster. The boy, embarrassed, asked her if he could marry her when he grew up. Argus didn't understand how this was possible, and those around him had never seen anything like it. The trial with the sacred crystal involved a struggle against inner demons to determine control over magical power. But nothing happened to Argus. Those around him noticed that Argus's face looked strange, and he seemed to feel unwell. Belle looked at him and believed that everything would definitely be fine, and mentally asked him not to give up and run away. She saw how Bella refused the little one to accept her proposal, asking for his forgiveness for it, because she doesn't belong to this world and will leave him very soon. But little Argus shouted that only she was in his world and asked Bella not to disappear. Magical power surged around Argus, and his emotions seemed to reach their limit. The father was asked to immediately get people out of here because the sacred crystal was infected, and no one understood what was happening. Seal approached Heidi and asked her, telling her to go with him because it was getting unsafe here. Seal said that the power of the sacred crystal could consume the magic tower. And Argus was now lost inside it, and Bella was very afraid that he would never return. Suddenly, the girl received a message about the main story. She had to help the heroine awaken her magical power and become a student of the magic tower. Lolo reported that Heidi needed to touch the sacred crystal, cleanse it, and awaken Argus. Belle shouted that Mrs. Heidi couldn't leave, and that she definitely should stay here to help. The girl grabbed Heidi's hand and told her she should go with her, but Seal said that it's dangerous to be in the magic tower now, and leaving Heidi here would definitely send her to the other world. Belle shouted that she couldn't leave now and urgently needed her help. Seal insisted that Heidi come to him, and he didn't understand where Bella got so much strength from. Heidi apologized to the master and told him that the lady really needed her, and that she couldn't leave her. But Lolo asserted that the protagonist does not want the main characters to protect her, and this contradicts the original plot. The Countess ran up to Seal and asked him why his son was still here, because everyone was urgently leaving the building. He said that the Count would take care of Mrs. Heidi and that his son should go with her. Argus was in danger. This supposed family, were definitely not going to save him. It is not surprising that, in the original, Argus became a villain. Until that moment, nobody needed Heidi. Her father brought her back from the village to strengthen relations with another family. And at first it seemed to her that Mr. Seal was sincerely in love with her. But after the appearance of Mrs. Bell, this feeling faded. The mistress was the first to honestly admit that she needed him, and she felt no hatred for this. Compared to that hypocrisy, Belle shouted that they didn't have time to wait and that Heidi needed to touch the crystal, after which her magic should awaken and Argus could come out. She couldn't let go of her hand and asked Heidi to help him because it was in her power. At the same time, the crowd running out of the tower panicked and didn't understand what was happening. Sasha and Heidi's father saw the girl approaching the infected crystal, and the man was surprised that this girl really wanted to die. Heidi almost touched the crystal, and it was as if thousands of knives were piercing her skin. But she tried to reach it because it wasn't enough. The young man informed the head of magic that a terrible disaster had occurred, and the magic crystal was infected. Huge lightning bolts appeared around the tower, and everything around it began to collapse. But after a few seconds, everything calmed down, and Mrs. Heidi sat in front of Argus, who was unconscious. Belle was very happy that she had finally woken up and thanked her for returning. Argus didn't understand what was happening to him, and it turned out that during the trial with the sacred crystal, his power was depleted, and as a result, the crystal became infected. As Heidi held the magic crystal in her hands, she felt warmth spreading through her heart, and a magical awakening. She realized that she had unexpectedly used magic, which is why she felt such sensations. Argus thanked Heidi for saving him and said he would be grateful until his death. Belle congratulated her on awakening her magical power and said that everything can turn out well if you really want it. Heidi said that if it weren't for Belle, she wouldn't have been able to awaken her magic and would always be a burden to her family, for which she is very grateful to her. The father ran up to her and asked if his daughter was injured and what had happened. He was perplexed. This girl suddenly used her magical power and even such rare healing magic. He immediately thought that this could raise the status of the family in the entire kingdom. And Sasha, who was nearby, was very angry because this damned girl managed to awaken magic. Because as a child she didn't even pass banal tests. At that moment, the owner of the magic tower approached them and asked the Count what had just happened here. He asked why the Count was here, because he assumed he disdained being included in the ranks of his students. Belle realized this was Argus's own uncle, and they looked very similar and were not close at all. The girl greeted the head of the tower and said she was the owner of the Nasslands and Argus's future wife. The young man thought for a moment and realized how similar this girl was to the one he knew. Suddenly, a little bell came out of Bella's bag, and the head of the tower was surprised that the lady had a magic pet. The young man did not understand how a pet could only serve someone stronger than him. But there was absolutely no magic in this girl. The young man said he had come here for a very important matter and would like to speak with everyone. He said he had just felt a very strong magic awaken and asked Heidi if it came from her. Her father reported that there must be some mistake and that his daughter's powers were not enough to destroy the sacred crystal that had disappeared. Heidi awakened healing magic, and the insidious man understood that this was the hope for a better future for his family, and that he could not allow anything to happen to her. The head of the tower said he wasn't acting to blame her, and that the sacred crystal had already been contaminated and lost its value. He looked closely at Heidi and invited her to become his student, because she has very outstanding abilities. Her family, who only saw benefits in Heidi, did not understand why her magic was awakening that day. Because her older sister was supposed to become a student. Lolo said that the hostess had successfully completed the task, and now the system would give her a reward. The reward was that the hostess would transition from a supporting character to a heroine whose task would be to maintain the stability of the book world. The subjects welcomed the Holy Father, and the young man asked how the temple had fared in his absence. Taking off the mask from his face, it turned out that the temple currently completely lacks information about the whereabouts of the heir to the kingdom of Luara. His Holiness said that his mission was carried out very poorly, as they still did not know the location. Moreover, he himself has already discovered where the heir is, and with the stolen magic tower. The sacred crystal will return to the temple. Late at night, Bella sat in the hot bath and thought that Lola was again not explaining anything to her, leaving her the reward. She looked at her hamster, and it seemed to her that it wasn't feeling well. But the baby suddenly pulled out of its mouth the same dazzling sacred crystal that had disappeared during the ceremony. Heidi was probably still kicking herself over the loss of the crystal, but it turns out this hamster stole it. In the original, after the main character awakens their magic, the sacred crystal disappears. But nobody knows where. She realized that the little bell was a gift from Juan, and just before his visit to the magic tower. Therefore, Argus was right and should re-examine Juan's story. It seems he is not as simple as she thought. He asked the maids to bring him clothes, but instead of them, Mr. Argus was in his room. He said he had some matters to attend to during the day, so he came specifically to see her. Bella understood. The maid told him she was bathing, and the girl felt very embarrassed. The young man sensed a wonderful aroma coming from the lady, and said he really wanted to be closer to her. The lady was very disconcerted by this persistent behavior, which was very unexpected. And she was not prepared for it. The gentleman asked if she was also afraid of his curse, so she acted cautiously. Indeed, the lady had never been as close to anyone as she was to Argus, and she had almost forgotten that he actually had a terrible curse. She said she didn't push him away because of the curse, and was just very surprised by his unexpected behavior. She said whether there was a curse or not, as long as the girl agreed. He would respect her wishes anyway. The girl promised him that they would definitely find a way to get rid of this curse and live happily. He suddenly took the girl in his arms and told her that he could not allow his girlfriend to become tense. One early morning at Karen's estate, Bella was feeding her hamster. Green approached her and told her that there was a man in the hall who claimed to be the owner of the tower. But he didn't dare let them into the estate. The girl was surprised why the owner of the tower came to her, and she actually guessed that the little bell had stolen the magic crystal. The young man was waiting for her in the hall, and next to him sat William, from whom she sensed traces of magic. She realized that in the Countess's estate, even the servants had a whiff of magic. So this boy was definitely not an ordinary person. The son of the owner of the magic tower, Tranti, also arrived with him, and wondered why the little noble was making them wait. He didn't understand why they were wasting time on an ordinary girl who didn't even have magic. At that moment, Bella approached them and told them that it had been a long time since they had seen the owner of the magic tower. His son was outraged that the lady made him wait so long, and even dared to say words about her husband. But the lady asked him not to insult the boyfriend in her presence and to apologize. The man asked Trinity to be quiet and said that it was actually rude of him. He apologized to his son, who disagreed completely. The son of the owner of the magic tower in the original appears in only one chapter. He grew up as the most beloved child and once considered Argus an enemy. The owner of the magic tower apologized personally, and the girl decided not to conflict with his son, so that everything would be the same as written in the book. The owner of the tower loved his son very much, which is why many things were allowed for him. The young man said he would like to become a student of magic and asked to express his opinion on the matter. In the original story, the owner of the tower invited Heidi to become his student. But who knew what other strange changes this might bring? The man said that many people do not have magical powers, but they can awaken them. And he has a feeling that there is great potential hidden in the Countess. The lady apologized for interrupting him, thanked him for the offer, but said she was forced to refuse the training. His son was outraged because she had no idea how many people were willing to become his father's students. And the girl said that she is usually very busy managing the territory and really has no free time. In this case, the young man asked Tranti to stay with her until the lady finished her business, and then come to the tower to train. He said that his son had already reached the age of independence and would stay with her to learn the art of governing, and that she could use him as a servant. Since the master of the magic tower asked this personally, the lady promised to carefully train the young master. The next morning, Bella woke up to the bright sunlight pouring into her room, and the lady felt that she was not lying on a pillow at all. She raised her head and saw that at that moment she was hugging Argus, who was lying next to her. After a while, they got down to work, and the young man promised her that he would no longer see her without her permission. The girl was very angry because he again used magic to get close to her, and her body had not recovered from the last time. The young man saw that she was very worried about him and was very pleased with this behavior. Argus saw how every day Bella worried more about him and showed him her kindness every day. Suddenly, Tranti approached her and told her that it was early in the morning and that the two of them had nothing to do. Argus didn't understand what kind of boy was in front of him, and Bella said that the owner of the magic tower came yesterday and invited her to study with him. The young men started fighting amongst themselves, but Bella asked them to observe the rules of decency. Otherwise, they would have to leave this place. Finally, they moved away from each other and muttered something quietly, but they fulfilled the girl's wishes. Belle went to Green and informed him that about 2 months ago, several commoners and slaves had joined the army, and if they survived the training. The young man said that they train regularly and are very enthusiastic about the idea of taking the position of platoon leader and company commander. The boy wondered what they were talking about, and Argus noticed that the young man had heard absolutely nothing about the new method of organizing an army. Belle noticed that the youngest master doubted his abilities and invited him to fight one-on-one. She promised that she wouldn't need Argus's help, and the only condition was that Tranti would not use magic. He agreed to use only military skills and communicated his conditions if the lady loses. He will undoubtedly become his father's student. But if he loses, he promised to be completely at the disposal of the Countess. William asked the lady if he could marry her on the battlefield. William was very successful in military affairs and could already fight on equal footing with squad leaders. And these boys were the exact same age. Argus told the boys not to act like weaklings and to fight until the end. The young men began the battle, and Bella was very interested in who would win. The girl watched William train, and although his body was all bruised, he always made it to the spot on time. And trained. She wished William good luck and worried with all her heart for his victory. William set his conditions so as not to waste the Countess's time and not interfere with the soldiers' training. They must attack 3 times, and whoever lowers the sword first loses. The boys started fighting with swords, and each of them wanted to achieve a triumphant victory. Belle strongly supported William, and the boy felt that they were sincerely concerned about him and supported him. Tranti noticed that William is good at dodging, but slowness is his main drawback. But William told him that he saw all his weaknesses on the surface in order to win. But Tranti himself did not notice that he had already lowered his sword, and this meant only one thing: he lost to William. The young man tried to say that the boy had violated their agreement, but William replied that in war all means are good. The son of the owner of the tower said that he had lost and asked the lady what she would order the loser to do. When the girl expressed her conditions, the young man was surprised that this was really all she wanted to ask. She entrusted him with a trip to Black Bear Mountain, and the boy wondered why the lady did not want Argus to accompany her. Bella replied that the young man had more important things to do, and that she would like to entrust him with this important task. The next day, Argus brought his father an expanded agreement with the tower owner, which he managed to obtain. But Argus reported that Bella managed to obtain this document, who personally asked the tower owner for this favor. And his mother was perplexed. She was just a small countess, and how could she persuade him? But Belcarin should not be underestimated, and just 6 months ago Nuz was a poor kingdom. Anne devastated. But after she inherited the title, the situation changed. His Majesty, contrary to all rules, agreed to create an army in Nass. And the owner of the tower does everything to make Bella his student. He told his father that he was going to marry this incredible girl, Belle Cullen. He asked the family, in accordance with the agreement, to consider the position of chief for him. Belle was heading to Black Bear Mountain, along with all her subordinates. The boy asked her why she decided to include this forgotten place in her domains. He implied that the lady was very naive, and that all her previous successes were just an accident. Green told the girl that they were there, and ordered her to start training. The main troops and the reserves fight each other according to the map, and each of them occupies their position on both sides of the valley. The combat task being to penetrate the enemy's position and capture their banner. And all this was done to test the soldiers' fighting skills and their strategic thinking. She informed Green that they should continue with the training as usual, and that Junior Master would guarantee their safety. The young man didn't understand why his father left him with her and what his plan was for this girl. The young man asked. It turns out they need to search for the mine starting from here, but suddenly they heard strange crunching sounds. Fortunately, Io turned out to be the girl's magic pet, who managed to escape again. He was holding some kind of gem in his paws, and the girl was surprised whether she had really found a mine. It turned out that the bun now knew where the deposit was located, and it was simply incredible. The young man sent a bird to tell his father that Belkurin had found a mineral deposit. No wonder he brought so many warriors precisely because of the ore. But it was very dangerous that the magic tower was determined to get these mines. In the Chamber of Commerce, Syl was playing chess with an important person and commenting on how this girl had brought many warriors with her. Syl was sure that the president shouldn't worry so much, and this was just a disorganized village gathering. This important person was the director of a trading company and was sure that, in numerical terms, he might be at a disadvantage. The young man asked if Syl was not worried about his beloved and if he had money and an army. He had the chance to lose the love of his life. The young man said that Hayden cannot be compared to others, and he believes he will be able to cope with his task. Meanwhile, at the mountain fortress, Argus interrogated the black bear while Belle and Tranti were leaving the camp. The lady and the young knight had just chased after the hamster, which led them to a huge cave. The lady asked if the young man could use magic to illuminate the cave. The young man recreated the fire with a wave of his hand and asked the girl to follow him. Here the cave stopped deeper, and the young master stated that now is the time to deal with this girl so that the entire mine belongs to the tower. And he was going to tell the others that the girl was lost in the cave, and he was sure that no one else would reach here. As soon as he drew his sword, Argus suddenly appeared in front of him, covering Belle behind him, who was walking with her back to him. The young man said that Tranti turned out to be reckless, but today he cannot even dream of leaving this cave alive. Green informed the knights that the training plan had changed, and he saw other troops on the mountain that they were supposed to delay. This meant that the training was over, and now the young men had to prove themselves in a real battle. William also stated that once they pick up a weapon, they must be prepared to use it once. Therefore, everyone swore to protect the Countess until death, and the Karen troops advanced. Tranti still couldn't believe that in front of him was Argus, who had just saved the girl. And since he ruined the boy's plan, he invited him to fight to the death right now. Tranti had clearly crossed the line, and Argus was determined to pay for the fact that the boy wanted to harm his beautiful one. Bella did not expect that the head of the magic tower and his son would turn out to be such vile people. And Argus was sure that she would not be willing to forgive him. Suddenly, the boy told his father that he had completed his task, but the man said he didn't understand what kind of task he was talking about. The boy said, because his own father ordered him to serve Belle Karen, to wait until she found the mines, and then organize a raid and robbery. Argus told the boy that villains usually lose when they talk too much, so he shouldn't even start. His father urgently asked everyone to stop, and a white magic ball appeared around his palm. Argus shouted, "He can give up the mine, but if he dares to mess with Bel again, then he will express his own grave." The boy asked Argus to apologize to him for his behavior at that moment. Otherwise, his father wouldn't let him go like this. But the man suddenly turned to Tranti and threateningly asked when he allowed him to steal the Countess Karen's mine. His father said that when he received his letter, he thought the boy was in danger, so he put aside his affairs and quickly gathered troops to come here. He apologized deeply for his son and really hoped that the girl could forgive him. Argus was sure that this could not stand and that the boy should definitely be punished. Trachny almost killed Bella and must definitely pay for it. The boy was sure that his father would never allow Argus to harm him, and he should take his side. But the young man replied that Argus and Tranti are brothers, so there is no need to be so aggressive. And Argus recounted how he deliberately broke the watch his mother gave him, but the man did not investigate. Just because the boy broke Argus's watch, he was hurt to the core. After all, his mother left him that watch, and for Argus, it was the only thing that contained a piece of his mother's love. Bel said that this grievance only concerns her and the youngest master, so there is no need to involve Argus in this matter. She turned to the owner of the magic tower and told him that today the youngest master raised his sword not only against her, but also against the authority of Naz. And if today's incident spreads, the Imperial family might assume that it benefits from the sugar trade. The man noticed that Countess Karen managed a small territory well, and now it seemed to him that she was extremely wise. He said the magic tower was responsible for what happened today, and they agreed to compensate the Countess for the damage. The girl said that Argus would name the conditions, and all requirements would depend on him. Tranti was outraged because Argus would not miss the opportunity to annoy him. Argus informed the owner of the magic tower that some unknown people were near the mountain, and he suspected they had come for Bella. His conditions were such that the boss's people would come down from the mountain and protect the Naz army, and he would not allow a single warrior to suffer. The man noticed that Argus had been a vengeful person since childhood, but the existence of Belkarin changed him a lot. Tranti informed his father that he himself would answer for his actions and support the Naz army. Suddenly they heard a strange sound. Everyone turned in one direction to see what was there. Argus reported that this sound is Bel's invention, and that by simulating a bird's whistle, information and codes can be transmitted to the military. Countess Karen was truly amazing, and no one had heard of anything like it. Therefore, the young man said that Belkarin could now go to the wizard's tower at any time and contact him personally. Tranti also said he apologized to the girl and asked if she could allow him to see what this bird whistle is. The girl replied that it was just a piece of wood and nothing unusual, and Tranti asked her to wait for him. The woman saw him as a child who doesn't know how broad the real picture is. Green told the girl that his troops had captured more than 10 enemies. Tranti asked if William was injured because he saw drops of blood on his clothes. Bel asked Green what the casualties among the personnel were and how they fared. Argus also tried to find out who sent these men, and Green replied that it was Earl Clinton. He held the Emerald Forest, which is not far from Nass, maintained personal correspondence, and maintained close ties with the heir to the Fry Empire. And this time, the assassination attempt was also planned by them. Bella discovered the whole truth, that the heir to the Fry Empire also wanted to kill her. And it seems that their actions caused a lot of trouble for people. His plan was to have a successful ambush in the Black Bear Mountain, and then they would capture Naz without any problems. Bell declared that they would treat them as they did, and ordered the soldiers to be called here immediately to save the Emerald Forest. In the castle of the ruler of the Emerald Forest, the head of the Empire's Chamber of Commerce, Fry asked if it was possible to capture Black Bear Mountain during this time. Sitting opposite him was Syl, who said that good news travels very fast. Suddenly, a young man burst into the meeting and brought the bad news that the Nass troops had entered the lands of the Emerald Forest and were heading straight for the castle right now. The young man said he was completely disappointed in his subordinates who allowed such things to happen. He said that the people trained by Belkurin defeated all his soldiers. The young man understood that it was all over, and if His Majesty found out that he was in cahoots with Fry, he would be executed. The representative of the Chamber of Commerce said that the show was over, and told his subordinate that they were leaving. He warned that he was sorry, and that this was the last time he would cooperate with the Razam family. In the city of the Emerald Forest, the girl found people who asked her for help. The people understood that if the Countess became their ruler, they would not be punished. So they treated the noble girl like a savior who saved them. Argus noticed that these kind people seemed to accept her, and the girl realized that it was quite easy to change the existing order. Previously, she worried that the inhabitants of the Emerald Forest would have to face the enemy. But everything turned out well, and the matters were resolved. Therefore, she could resolutely continue her plan. She ordered her loyal knights to immediately attack the Count's castle and save the Emerald Forest. And everyone was sure that the victory would be their ladies. The ruler was informed that the inhabitants of the entire Emerald Forest were helping Belkurin invade his castle right now. Everyone was in a panic because they had no chance of salvation. The only way out now, in the name of all the counts, was to capture the Emerald Forest before Belkurin did. And no one could allow Argus to expand his power through this girl. But suddenly Syl drew his sword and loudly declared that in the name of Count Razam, he had come to save the Emerald Forest that the Fry Empire had invaded. And Count Clinton now had no choice but to die as the most pathetic coward.
Ko.